Oh, hello. Back live again. Once again, we're doing some history, just learning some history, because last time we did World War One and World War Two, which I actually really enjoyed, despite me being kind of tired at the time. Now, we will actually be doing the Punic Wars, because a viewer Ducky, that is frequent the channel a bit, has talked about it, so I thought, why not do that next? Still not feeling the best. That's why I kind of started a bit late. Wasn't feeling the world's best, but doing better. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be learning some more history. Please do actually comment, or if you see this on YouTube, I'm saying at least, do comment something that we should go over. Besides that, though, we're going to get started actually doing some stuff. Actually going live. Alright, let's do this.
Carthage was an economic powerhouse whose wealth propelled it from the status of humble colony to mighty empire. But success was not achieved by the hands of explorers and traders alone. There was a blood tax to pay.
That's a
This
pretty
burden
cool,
was shouldered by the
or
Punic military, which deployed fleets and armies across the Mediterranean. Countless wars would be fought to establish, expand, and maintain the vast influence network which lay at the foundation of the Carthaginian Empire. But perhaps the
okay.
greatest challenge would come in the struggle for Sicily. It would be here, in this proving ground, that vast sums of blood and treasure would be spilled over the centuries. Today, we'll be diving into the history of these Punic Sicilian wars.
Alrighty. I'm already loving the art that they're using for this. I really like the armors,
I
looks,
love
stuff like
learning
that.
about these units and battles of history, but I have to admit, they
Well,
always leave me with an itch for taking up the command chair myself.
I guess we're just looking at normal dude's face. Hello, good sir. Guess we'll be joining you for the next hour and 43 minutes.
But you can do so today with our
Pirate story.
sponsor, War Thunder.
Not bad.
It's one of the most comprehensive vehicle-based
He's got a
systems
little ad,
available,
but of course we're going to
capable
watch
of
it
taking on
because,
drones,
while we're
missiles,
watching his
war
video, we
machines,
can at least
and more.
watch his ad.
These face off in dynamic combined arms PvP battles, which you can play on PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Series X.
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere is super immersive, with incredible graphical details, authentic sound effects, and beautiful music, which sets the atmosphere just right.
Game looks
As a lover of
amazing.
military history, I love how you can choose from vehicles from over 100 years to really get a sense of their evolution in terms of appearance and
Hmm.
capabilities. What's more,
That's
each
actually a
vehicle
lot
is
of
customized
years.
in a 3D decor,
Oh.
using hundreds of markings, equipment sets, and camouflage patterns. Gameplay itself is riveting, with features such as X-ray damage that provides feedback on your hits,
Ooh.
or the mouse aim mode for controlling aircraft without the need
That's a
for a
very
pure
cool look,
joystick.
honestly,
For me, these dogfights are the
going
best
through.
part of the game, as I grew up playing flight simulators at the museum, but always missed the competitive side of things.
I will be honest, I play some games kind of similar to this, one of which is called Enlisted, and I almost always exclusively play the plane when I get the chance to. I love being in the air, doing carpet bomb runs, and fighting other planes in dogfights.
That this game offers, which has yielded some of my favorite high adrenaline moments of the year. So play War Thunder today for free on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PS5 by using my
Yeah,
link
War
in the
Thunder is a
description.
cool game, I will be
Exclusive access
honest.
of multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, boosters, and more.
Oh, didn't mean to pause it.
See you on the battlefield.
Alright, add out the way, let's get on to some history now. Let's learn about the Forgotten Punic Wars.
Before we start, we must ask ourselves, why Sicily? What made it so special?
Yes, what did make it
But like
special?
many historical questions, much can be learned by turning to geography. Here we find that the island of Sicily is located in the central Mediterranean, at the focal point of many important trade routes that
Yeah,
crisscross
that
the
is
continent.
true. The Mediterranean was a major trade area uh, back then. I mean, it still is really. It just is so easy for all these areas to reach each other. So that does actually have a fair advantage being in the center
The
of it.
master of Sicily thus held the keys to controlling this vast market.
Yep.
Important strategic locations included the numerous natural harbors dotting the coast, the Straits of Messina, and the smaller neighboring archipelagos such as
Yeah.
the Gaetes and the Aeolian Islands.
Hmm.
As for Sicily itself, there is much to talk about. land is dominated by mountains, which cover roughly 25% of the terrain, with another 60% taking the form of hill country, which
Yeah, that's a lot of, not want to say rough, but bumpy terrain for such a small area already.
eventually
That's a
encompassed a
yikes.
full 15% of lowlands. But despite these somewhat inhospitable sounding figures, Sicily actually proved to be quite an ideal home.
Oh.
Its slopes were filled with many life bringing rivers and natural springs, while its montane and
Oh.
fertile volcanic fed soils made it an ideal place to grow crops.
Yeah, that does sound like a good
Sicily's
farmland.
agricultural abundance would later be demonstrated when it became an important breadbasket for the Roman Republic. In addition to what the land provided, the surrounding seas also held abundant maritime resources. The primary beneficiaries of these geographic features were the early inhabitants of the island. In this regard, there were three major groups.
Let's actually look at this real quick. I'm curious where their major cities. I'm assuming these are what their major cities were. So it looks like most of them, yeah, do follow the pattern of sticking along rivers. And then you have this one. I'm guessing there's a lake or something here, but this one's just kind of off a bit compared to the rest. Same with this one. They're just kind of. Wait, no, this is a hill area, but yeah, this village right here, if this is what they are, it's just kind of chilling up in the mountains. Wonder what they were doing up there.
The Elimi, the Sicani, and the Siculi. These tribes inhabited many settlements which sprung up across the landscape and eventually developed into a series of complex urban villages and towns over the
Okay,
course of
so it
time.
was
These
cities
were
and
organized
villages.
into loose federations, but by and large they remained fairly independent. However, they would not be alone for long, as others looked on to their homes with envious
Yep.
eyes. The enticing nature of Sicily brought new guests from across the Mediterranean. One of the earliest groups to arrive were the Phoenicians, who began to set up trade posts and
Good old
establishments as
Phoenicians.
early as the 11th century BC. These were mostly located on the western side of the island,
Huh.
nearest Africa, and included the early settlements of Lilybaeum, Matia, Panormus, and Salentum. At about the
Hmm.
same time, the Greeks also began planting their own colonies on the eastern end of the island. These included the
Huh.
settlements of Naxos, Acropolis,
Cool. That's a.
Zama, Ketini, Messana, and
Oh,
Damaris.
boy, that clicked by mistake.
Chief amongst them.
What is this? Uh, Close that. I don't want. Uh, yeah, close the program. I don't want that program up. Don't know why that's up. I don't think y'all can see it, but yeah, a program opened on my screen. There we go. Okay, got it to close. But yeah, let's actually check this out real quick. So they settled. What is it? One, two, three, four, five, six. Six colonies. They have the Greeks with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And I think that's 18 up there. Long story short, the Greeks settled a lot of colonies on here compared to our boys down over
Next
here.
would be the colony of Syracuse. Founded by the Corinthians in 734 BC, it would rise to become one of the largest Greek cities of its time, with huge influence over the affairs of not just Sicily, but also the wider Hellenistic world.
So the Greeks' biggest city was in Sicily. So it technically wasn't on their land, but on a colony of their area. Maybe the Greeks took it over at some point. Well, yeah, it says Greeks and Carthage. So that actually kind of answers that. That's probably true. The Greeks probably did try to
Population
colonize and take over
of
there
the
at
island.
one point.
In many cases, their presence displaced the locals who were forced up into the central hinterlands. Other times, though, communities would live alongside each other and begin to assimilate. Over the centuries, this cross pollination of ideas led to a fascinating meld of cultures across the
Hmm.
region, with unique new hybridized customs, religion, and architecture.
Yeah, that's the actual beauty of culture stuff. Is I know like some people are like don't use others' cultures stuff like that, but this is what I find amazing when we get people that just want to have share their culture stuff like that, mix and match because that's what makes culture so beautiful. Mixing that stuff together and getting something new, something interesting, or maybe even just combining them to let's say like Cajun food stuff like that with ones from England like traditional let's say traditional English food mixed with some of the spices, seasonings, stuff like that that you see in more traditional Cajun dishes, stuff like that. That's I just find that kind of stuff like amazing when you mix stuff like that together.
In addition, the population itself was increasingly intertwined as many new marriages bridged the divide between the various Sicilian, Greek, and Phoenician groups. The end result was a complicated web of relationships which created an incredibly fluid and dynamic political situation. Even at the best of times, the status quo was inherently unstable. This all was made worse by expansionist forces which constantly feuded for control of Sicily from both within and without.
Ouch!
Warfare there
Lots of
remained
war.
endemic as small conflicts often snowballed into massive wars with chains of alliances forming up on either side of any given issue. It's in the context of this turbulent
I'm
time
guessing
that
that's
we
where the
first
Punic
learn
Wars
about
come
the
from, or
influence of
these
Sicilian
wars that
tradition.
happen from these
One could
scuttles.
argue that Carthage played a role in Sicily from its very founding. After all, as a colony itself, at the hub of important trade routes, its merchants surely set foot on the island many times in the pursuit of their deals. But for the most part, Carthaginian involvement remained at this relatively low level, and its projection of soft power was no more pronounced than many of the other Phoenician colonies. Things would, however, begin to change by the 6th century BC, with the decline of Tyre's influence in the west and the ascent of Carthage to take its place.
Oh.
The new rising Punic power was keen to flex its muscles by exerting more influence over the strategic island of Sicily, both economically and politically. This
Oh.
began in the west, where
So
Carthage had
Carthage is
assembled its forces.
actually over here is where Carthage started. Then they tried to dominate over here with their military power. Okay. So I thought it was originally here. No, they just had their own scuttles. But Carthage itself actually started right here. Okay.
Action in exchange for tribute,
Did not know that.
manpower, and access to trade. Over time, cultural osmosis meant that many of these entered into such treaties eventually adopted Carthaginian customs and dialects. Within a few decades, Carthage thus waded deeper into the quicksand of Sicilian affairs. Sometime in the middle of the 6th century BC, this appears to have led the nobility of Carthage to finally turn its soft power into hard power. Justin, a Roman
Yep.
historian, tells us that the semi mythical king Malchus took the lead by raising a large Carthaginian army and invading the island. Though few records exist, it appears that his campaign involved capturing booty and slaves and sacking a number of areas
Yep.
in the western regions. Certainly, this won Malchus enough profit and renown for him to return home in celebration. However, his impact on the island amounted to little more than a propaganda victory, as we have no evidence of direct rule being established over Sicily in this period.
Damn.
Nonetheless, the precedent set by this first campaign paved the way for future conflict. After all, Carthage had proven to all observers that it was a force to be
There
reckoned with,
goes
a power
greed
both willing and able to
leading
expand.
into the way. Greed for
Conditions
power.
came into play in 510 BC when the Spartan prince Darius sought to establish a new colony in Sicily. The local Almeans of Segesta mounted an opposition to the new arrivals and
Okay,
eventually
so
turned to the Carthaginians for help.
they didn't.
While we don't know
So they were so deep in Carthage um, help that they didn't even want the Greeks there anymore.
exactly what happened, the newfound allies ultimately proved victorious in these efforts. Thus,
Yep.
we see that parties on both sides of the narrow divide between Sicily and North Africa could take advantage of increased Punic involvement. It's hard to imagine, however, if either side could have foreseen what was to come. The catalyst for the next wave of violence took place at the start of the 5th century BC. It's at this point that the political winds had once again shifted in Sicily, as an increasing number of Greek colonies fell under the sway of tyrants. In the south, two Dorian Greek rulers consolidated power, with Gelon laying claim to the lands around Syracuse, while his ally, Theron, seized the central lands around Acragas.
Okay.
Together, they were poised to dominate the other Greek, Sicilian, and Phoenician leaders. Meanwhile, the Ionian Greek resistance consolidated in the north behind the leadership of Terilius of Himera and Anaxilus of Rhegium.
Huh.
But how long could they hold out against the tyrants? For Carthage, this was not a question they could wait to have answered. According to the historian Diodorus, they therefore began to draft plans for military intervention. In these matters, it is
Okay.
likely that the rising Magnate clan and their leader Hamilcar I played a large
I
part
don't
in
know why I'm
directing their
yawning so
withdrawing policy.
much.
When Theron took over the city of Himera in 483 BC, the ousted
This kind of
Greeks
history is
immediately
nice to
invoked
listen to
Carthaginian
help you fall
supremacy.
asleep as
This
well,
was the casus belli they had long
which is
awaited.
beautiful
A
about it.
huge army was now raised, consisting of Carthaginians, Libyans, Sardinians, Gauls, and Iberians. This great host set sail from the west with a fleet of several hundred ships.
That's a lot
At
of
the exact same
boats.
time, King Xerxes of Persia launched his own assault on mainland Greece. The Hellenistic world
Huh,
risked being devoured from both ends.
that's not good.
Disunity amongst the Greeks meant that neither the Sicilians nor the mainlanders sent each other aid and defense, and many cities actually sided with the foreigners in their respective theaters. Things
That's
were
fair
looking
enough.
bleak. Luckily, the Greeks were favored by Poseidon, and the incoming Punic fleet was battered by storms during the crossing to Panormus,
Oh?
which cost them many horses. It also
Yep.
meant that Hamilcar had to pause temporarily to regroup and repair his forces, which gave the Greeks precious time to mount an opposition. This allowed the tyrant Theron to fortify Himera, while his ally Gelon rushed to meet him with a veteran army of some 50,000 foot and 5,000 horse. After a few days,
Reinforcements out.
Hamilcar
Oh,
proceeded to the hilltop city of Himera, establishing a camp with his ships by the sea and another on one of the ridges to the west of the city. Hamilcar soon
kind of surprised that they sent their troops out. I'm no battle strategist, but I honestly sure it would have been more of a siege, but they probably could have got more out of it if they hugged closer towards the city and used the walls for archers to shoot down. I'm sure they're going to explain something why that wouldn't work here in a moment. I'm just saying that of what I think, and I'm going to be curious what actually happened and how.
managed
Now,
to defeat Theron's forces in a pitched battle, forcing them back into the city and allowing his own troops to now pillage the area with apparent
okay,
impunity.
so they were forced back into the
However,
city
their
anyway.
early victories would be reversed with the arrival of Gelon from the east. The reduced numbers of Punic cavalry proved unable to hold off the enemy, and Greek
Oh
horsemen
yeah,
overran the dispersed marauders with heavy losses. Hamilcar withdrew to
that's
his
not
camp
good with
with
heavy
the orders now
losses.
calling for cavalry reinforcements from his own Ionian Greek allies.
Oh,
Unfortunately, these messages were intercepted by Gelon. Rather
nice.
than deny aid entirely, the clever commander disguised his own forces as reinforcements and sent them over to the enemy camp at daybreak, as if they were there to help. The
That's
Carthaginians followed
amazing.
orders and admitted the cavalry into their ranks. A few hours later, the main Greek force swept around the south side of Himera. In response, the Carthaginian army emerged to meet them, and a massive pitched battle ensued. Diodorus Siculus writes that, quote, they sounded with the trumpets the signal for battle, and a shout arose from the two armies, one after the other, each eagerly striving to outdo their adversaries in the volume of their cheering. The
Huh.
slaughter was great, and the battle was swaying back and forth.
Nothing like losing
Recent
your
discovery
voice
of
before
numerous
battle.
military graves near the site confirmed the viciousness of this fight, with hundreds of skeletons bearing the traces of deep wounds caused by arrows, spears, swords, and daggers.
Ouch.
The two sides must have clashed in a fierce, bloody fight which dragged on for hours. At this critical moment, the trap within the sea camp was sprung, and the disguised Greeks unleashed chaos, slaughtering the bewildered Carthaginians. Here,
Yep.
Diodorus records the precision of the strike which unfolded. Quote, they at once galloped to where the general Hamilcar was busy with the sacrifice, slew him, and then set fire to the ships. Thereupon the
Yeah, that's a
smoke
good way
served
to
as a
win.
signal, and Gelon advanced with his entire army in battle order against the Carthaginian camp. The smoke and
There
the
goes
burning
their
flames
camp.
had a direct impact on the main battle, emboldening the Greeks and causing a rout amongst the Carthaginians. The fighting now moved to the land camp,
Oh yeah,
with
that's not going
reinforcements
to end
rallying,
well for
pushing
them.
back against the disorganized Greek pursuers and threatening to reverse the entire situation. But the tide of battle once again changed when Theron's forces in Himera now sallied out to strike the flank. This final blow
And reinforce.
shattered the
Well, not
Punic line,
reinforcements. The
pushing them in
reinforcements
all
won,
directions.
but they're coming
Here's
back.
how Diodorus recounts the event. Quote, since Gelon had given orders to take no prisoners, there followed a great slaughter of the enemy in their flight, and in the end, no less than 150,000 of them were slain. All who escaped the battle and fled to a strong position at first warded off the attackers, but the position they had seized had no water, and thirst compelled them to surrender to the victors.
Yeah.
Just under half of the Carthaginian army and a small number of ships managed to escape. Yet on the journey home, they were struck with another storm, which reportedly sank most of the fleet. Thus, the First Sicilian War ended in spectacular defeat for the Punic power.
Yeah, that's a lot of
The
loss for
victory
them.
was celebrated endlessly across the Greek world, whose armies had simultaneously managed to score wins against the invading armies of Xerxes at Salamis and Hamilcar at Himera.
Hmm.
In the short term, Carthage is said to have braced for a counterattack. When this did not materialize, they sent embassies
Yep.
back to Sicily. Apparently, the Greek tyrants were content to solidify their holdings on the island and accepted a ceasefire without further bloodshed, in exchange for
At least I
freedom
got this
and
first
long-term commercial
ceasefire.
talents.
We're going to have a
For
lot more
decades,
though.
Carthage would lick its Sicilian wounds and turn its attention to other theaters of war such as North Africa and Sardinia. During this time, though, a new status quo developed Sicily as the local powers adjusted to the Punic withdrawal. This largely benefited the tyrants Theron and Gelon, who now reigned uncontested. But as always in
Hmm.
Sicily, peace was tentative, and
Yeah.
coalitions inevitably reformed to oppose the current reigning power. For the most part, this took the form of the ongoing feud between the Ionian and Dorian Greeks, with the Sicilians caught in the middle. When the tyrants died, their heirs were unable to maintain their grip on power, and the island once again slipped into a fractured state of
So
war
it's literally
and
just
political
everyone
instability.
fighting for this island, getting
The
power
Carthaginians
hungry,
once
dying,
again
and then someone else
took
trying to take
control
over.
of Sicily. Carthage, now having recovered and standing stronger than ever before, would have something to say on the matter. As Carthage sought to flex its military might overseas, King Hamilcar, leader of the powerful Magnid clan, was keen to gain a foothold on the strategic island of Sicily. Thus it was that in 480 BC, he launched a grand campaign to assist local Greek allies against the reigning powers of Acragas and Syracuse. This first Punic Sicilian War would climax at the Battle of Himera, which saw a fatal series of disasters lead to the ultimate defeat of the Carthaginians. For 70
Oop.
years, their armies would not set foot on the island. However, the ascension of Hannibal, grandson of the slain Hamilcar, would see decades of pent up resentment unleashed upon the island. He would ensure that the black stain of Himera would be washed clean with waves of bloodshed. This would be
Yeah.
his finest hour.
So this is our second war. Hannibal's Revenge. All right. Let's see what Hannibal
In the
did.
impulsion of Carthage's military invasion, the victorious tyrants Theron and Gelon were able to consolidate their power on the island and even boost their geopolitical stature across the Hellenic world. Yet, as would occur in mainland Greece, the defeat of a unifying external threat quickly resulted in a return to traditional quarrels. In the same way that Athens and Sparta would soon turn on one another, this shift was also made apparent in Sicily when the new rulers of Acragas and Syracuse came to blows. In both
Oh,
cases, this fracturing of Greek unity would grant reprieve to their enemies. Carthage, for instance, was able to use this interbellum period to rise to new heights.
cool.
It
They
ramped up
grew a
its
lot.
mercantile activities across the Mediterranean and ushered in a grand age of exploration. For instance, two famous Punic navigators would sail exploratory fleets beyond the Pillars of Hercules, with Himilco heading north along the European coast in search of the Isles of Tin, and Hanno heading south
Hmm.
along the African coast in search of new colony sites and perhaps even a circumnavigation of continents.
Okay.
Stories of their exploits would be widely circulated, and exotic trophies such as gorilla skins would reportedly be displayed in the city of Carthage itself, inspiring the next generation of ambitious children. One of these would be
That's fair.
Punic,
Got to
grandson
keep
of
the
the victorious
children
Punic, who would
wanting to
play a
go
key part
explore
throughout
to
Punic
get stuff
story.
done.
Around this same time, we hear of how the city further expanded across the lands of North
I'm
Africa,
gonna move out the
winning
way
over
real
Phoenician
quick for y'all
peoples
so
like the
y'all can
Greeks and
see
Romans,
this.
while striking out with distant expeditions to establish relations with the Garamantes and the Cyrenaians across the desert. Closer to home, it seems that political changes,
I'm
even
gonna
so
turn it up
remarkable,
also a
give
little
way
bit
to a
for y'all.
republican form of government, with new
Now that that's
institutions
out the
such as the
way.
Cephalature, the Popular Assembly, and the Tribunal of 104, which would be praised by philosophers such as Aristotle. Amidst this newfound stability and prosperity, the Punic leaders would not lose sight of their dreams of controlling the central Mediterranean. Thus, we see them increasingly invest
Fair,
in the
they're on their
projection of soft
goals.
power
They know what
through
they
trade,
want.
treaties, and the construction of new fortifications across areas of Sardinia and western Sicily. Yet for now, they would bide their time and avoid outright conflict with the Greek world. For example, when the
Yeah,
Peloponnesian
Greeks were
War
kind
would
of
see the lowlands
dangerous
of
when
Sicily,
they really
they
wanted to
carefully
be,
avoided becoming sucked into the chaos, despite
compared
reportedly
to our
being asked to
boys.
intercede. Best to let the Greeks bloody themselves, while waiting patiently on the sidelines.
Yep,
Although
patience is
Carthage would
key to
remain out of the
win.
picture for another half decade, it will still be relevant for us to give some context for the war that was about to erupt in Sicily. This would be but one
And a new
chapter
war,
in the larger
apparently.
narrative of the
Then again,
Peloponnesian
most
War,
of this is
which has
just
seen Athens and
war,
Sparta
if I'm
clash with their
correct,
allies for hegemony in the
that they
Greek world.
did.
Starting in 431 BC and lasting over 20 years, the two sides would bloody one another in a war of escalating bloodshed. Recently, Sparta had gained the edge over an increasingly desperate Athens
Sparta
that now
doing
looked to even
Sparta
the
stuff
odds.
as usual.
Thus, when the opportunity arose to side with the city of Segesta in a local conflict against Silenus, the Athenians pounced at the invitation to collect the funds and manpower which had been promised them for their aid. In 415 BC, they set off with a fleet of over 100 ships
Oh,
for the Great Sicilian
yep, go around
expedition.
my head.
To their dismay, it was soon discovered that Segesta was in no position to pay up for the assistance as promised.
Oof,
But
bro
with
can't
such a
pay his
force
debt.
already marshaled, the invaders were not keen to turn home empty handed. Instead, they sought to make war upon Syracuse. Victory would serve not only to cripple a potential Spartan ally, but could also bring
That's
with it
fair.
far more wealth and manpower than might ever have been offered by the minor settlements of Sicily.
Bro should have just
This
paid.
campaign began
Bro
with
should
initial
have just
success.
paid.
In the first year, the Athenians made headway along eastern Sicily. When Syracuse attempted to march north against them, the invaders managed to sail behind them to establish a fortified beachhead in the Greek
Okay.
harbor. A pitched battle then ensued, which saw the Athenian veterans prevail over
Actually,
the
we're gonna
Syracusans,
stop the video
pushing
real
them
quick,
back behind the walls.
because I want to actually look something up. Because they keep saying it, but I genuinely don't know what it is. I think that's how you spell it? A pitch battle? Ah. Okay. Okay, so they're basically, right before they're going in, they're deciding what they're gonna
Through
do.
the entirety
Okay.
of 414 BC, the Athenians
Good to know.
engaged the Syracusans in a
Good to
grinding
know.
siege that saw an impressive series of walls and counterwalls constructed across the rugged outskirts of the city. As would occur many times in this period, as soon as there was blood in the water, other sharks would come out to feed.
Yeah.
Sensing an opportunity,
Sharks
Sparta
are
and
around.
Corinth now came to the aid of
Nope.
Syracuse with a
Okay.
relief force.
I'm out the way.
This,
Hello.
in addition to ongoing attrition and disease, did much to turn the tide against the Athenians. But just as the invaders began to
Back over here we go.
the Syracusans
Yeah, I feel like I would do a
vicious
lot of
naval
moving
attack,
in
which dealt
this.
heavy
I'm not gonna
casualties
lie.
and crippled their fleet. Fighting continued for several days, and ultimately, the Athenian commanders sought to salvage the situation by making a land retreat. This force would be devastated in the attempt, with all survivors either being executed or worked to death in the stone quarries as retribution. For the
Ouch.
Syracusans,
Yeah,
it was a glorious victory.
yeah, you really didn't want to
Yet,
retreat back
as
then,
was always the
unless
case
you
in
wanted
Sicily,
to
there was little
get
time to
punished for
celebrate before the outbreak of the
cowardness.
next conflict.
So,
The sparks
yeah,
of war was lit when
just
the feud
fight to the
between
death, my
Segesta
man.
and Silenus once again flared up. In this contest, the leaders of Segesta turned to the Carthaginians for assistance. This was precisely the opportunity that the Punic leader Hannibal was looking for. However,
Hannibal,
he also knew that
my
provoking
man.
Syracuse prematurely could risk the campaign. Thus, envoys were sent to the eastern Greek city to prevent escalation and even ask for arbitration of the conflict. This appears to have worked to preserve Syracuse's neutrality, likely due to the idea that they were more preoccupied with the aftermath of the Athenian expedition and all the messy geopolitics that entailed. With this green light, the Carthaginians
Man, I don't know why
hired a
I'm
small
tired.
mercenary force of about 6,000
Yes, I had a long
Libyan
day
and
at
Italian
work.
mercenaries and dispatched them to Segesta. Here the force helped rout the army of Silenus.
I'm just gonna stop moving.
These troops were furious
You just
that
get
their
to see what you
rival
get to
had
see.
unilaterally sought external help in the conflict and now sought to level the field by calling upon their own allies. Once more, the dominoes of war began to fall. But while the Syracusans debated this new predicament, Carthage brought down the hammer. In 410 BC, they launched an expeditionary force which would now end the 70 years of peace and launch the Second Punic Sicilian War.
Alright, we got our
Here
second
is
war
how
going.
Diodorus Siculus recounts their arrival in awe. Quote, "At this time, Hannibal, the general of the Carthaginians,
Very
gathered
cool looking
together both the
boats.
mercenaries he had collected from Iberia and the soldiers he had enrolled from Libya, manned 60 ships of war, and made ready some 1,500 transports. On these he loaded the troops, the siege engines, missiles, and all the other accessories. After crossing with the fleet the Libyan Sea, he came to land in Sicily, on the promontory which lies opposite Libya and is called Lilybaeum. And at that very time, some cavalry from Silenus were tarrying in these regions, and having seen the great size of the fleet as it came to land, they speedily informed their fellow citizens of the presence of the enemy.
Yeah, I would
Hannibal had all
probably
told,
inform
as
and
a
not want to
force
be
has
on the
reported,
beach when that many
200,000
people
infantry
come up
and
to my
4,000
home.
cavalry, but as Timaeus says, not many more than 100,000 men. His ships he hauled on land in the bay about Motia.
Okay,
Every
cool
one of
looking
them
armor, bro.
wishing to give the Syracusans the impression that he had not come to make war upon them or to sail along the coast with his naval force against Syracuse. While modern estimates tend to place the invading army at closer to 40,000, It was nonetheless an immense force which dwarfed the roughly 20,000 or so inhabitants of Selinus and was fully capable of significantly altering the balance of power in Sicily. As the
Gotta
campaign
wake
got
up.
underway, Hannibal's first move was to link up with his Segestan allies and together march upon Selinus before Syracuse could respond. Unlike his grandfather, Hannibal was fully prepared to take his first fortified objective by storm. To this end,
It's
the
fair.
poor state of the Selinus walls
Don't
made
be
its shock and
scared,
awe
just go
tactics
in,
all the
kind
more
of deal.
effective. Siege towers were brought against the walls, battering rams rolled against the gates, and great streams of projectiles rained upon the defenders.
Yep.
Breaches were formed, and through these poured the Carthaginians. But the Greeks mounted a desperate defense to hold them at bay.
I don't think
We are
you're
told that this
getting a
brutal
defense
fighting
against a number
lasted
like
for 9
that.
days as the invaders slowly cut their way through the city, while under constant attack by enemy soldiers on the ground and citizens overhead who hurled projectiles down upon their ranks.
At least the
Street by
citizens
street,
tried.
building by building, the Carthaginians advanced through Selinus until they reached the Agora. This is where the defenders made their last stand. Hannibal showed no mercy, and they were all cut down to the last, their bodies joining the 16,000 corpses which choked the bloody streets and burnt homes of the city. Diodorus reports that the army brutally murdered or enslaved all survivors, took everything of value,
Damn.
and engaged in a final night of rape and bloodshed before destroying the city.
Yeah. They're
But
using
the
a lot of
Carthaginians did
graphic
not stop there.
language.
Having reasserted their
Please
dominance,
tell me I remember to put graphic language on my thing with how much they're speaking. I did not, yeah. We're gonna put that on real quick. I don't know if Twitch changes it, even though I'm already live. Really hoping they do, because last couple history videos we watched, at least yesterday, didn't really say anything graphic, but they're this video is a bit more graphic. Probably should have put that warning on in the beginning or watch this video ahead of time. But yeah. Okay, so we now have the content thing for graphic. Hopefully that goes on, and back to learning history.
they now levied local allies to swell their numbers to over 60,000 infantry and next descended upon Himera. This was both a strategic and personal objective for Hannibal. Wasting no time, he was keen not to repeat the mistakes of his grandfather and prepared to once again take this next bastion by storm. The Himerans had heard what befell their neighbors within the walls of the city and therefore decided to sally forth from the gates. This bold attempt was summarily crushed by the overwhelming force of the Carthaginians. By now, Syracuse had managed to ship 4,000 reinforcements to the city, urging
Okay, they got
and
some
resolve in the face of the
reinforcements
attack.
at least.
However, the citizens were terrified of what fate might befall them and began to evacuate. Amidst the chaos,
Smart
Hannibal
moves,
gave no
smart
pause and now
moves.
ordered his armies and siege engines to take Himera. When rumor spread that Carthage was simultaneously preparing a secret attack on Syracuse, their own troops within the city panicked. They immediately boarded their ships for home, carrying with them as many civilians as could be spared and vowing to return shortly thereafter to save the rest. Diodorus
Something
recounts
tells me
what
they
happened
did not
next.
come back in time.
Quote, those who had been left behind in Himera spent the night under arms on the walls, and when dawn arrived, the Carthaginians surrounded the city and launched repeated attacks. The remaining Himerans fought with no thought for their lives, expecting the arrival of the ships. For that day, therefore, they continued to hold out. But on the next, even when the triremes were already in sight, it so happened that the wall began to fall before the blows of the siege engines, and the Iberians
Yep,
to pour
right
a
as they
body
get
into
there,
the
it
city.
starts falling.
Some of the barbarians thereupon would hold off the Himerans, who rushed up to bring aid, while others, gaining command of the walls, would help their comrades get in. Now that the city had been taken by storm, for a long time the barbarians continued, with no sign of compassion, to slaughter everyone they seized. But when Hannibal issued orders to take prisoners, although the slaughter stopped, the wealth of the dwellings now became the object of plunder. Hannibal,
Yep.
after sacking the temples and dragging out the suppliants who had fled for them for safety, set them afire, and the city he razed to the ground, 240 years after its founding. Of the captives, he distributed the women and children among the army and kept them under guard. But the men, whom he took captive, some 3,000, he led to the spot where once his grandfather Hamilcar had been slain by Gelon, and, after torturing them, put them all to death.
Bro was
The
a cool
terrifying
bastard.
message had just been sent. The might of Carthage was not to be ignored. Hannibal had made sure of it and buried the stain of Himera alongside the thousands of dead Greeks. This demonstration sent chills across the island. Having accomplished all he wished to do, Hannibal then departed back to Carthage, taking his army and loot with him. He left behind a Sicily ravaged by warfare in his wake. In the aftermath, only the powerful cities of Acragas and Syracuse could be said to challenge Punic supremacy on the island. However, with the Carthaginian force having withdrawn, neither proved quick to act. It was only in 407 BC that an exiled Syracusan general named Hermocrates reopened the war by invading the Phoenician cities in the west. He did
New
so by recruiting
invasion.
the survivors of Himera and Selinus to form a 6,000-man-strong warband. These now raided the Phoenician regions of the west, burning their crops, enslaving
Yeah,
inhabitants,
fair
and
enough.
defeating
They
local
messed with
militias
them,
in
so they
battle.
came back
To
and
shock
did
the
it to them
civilians of
now.
Syracuse into action, Hermocrates then went to the charred ruins of Himera, collected the surviving inhabitants, and sent them on to Syracuse to show what the Carthaginians had done. It appears that this move was also meant to bring about a political revolt that would overthrow the democracy of the city and see Hermocrates named its tyrant. The plan, however, fell apart and he was killed in the attempt.
Oh,
In response,
well, he's
the
dead now.
Carthaginians voted to resume the war and re-elected Hannibal as their general. He promptly named his Magonid kinsman Himilco as his second-in-command and raised another massive force for the campaign. The Greeks of Sicily caught wind of their preparations and deployed a fleet of triremes to monitor the straits between them and North Africa. In
Those
406
boats are going to
BC,
get sunk.
Hannibal was ready. A vanguard fleet was sent forth to clear the way, clashing
Yep,
with the Greeks in the open
and
seas.
there they go.
Roughly 80 ships partook in the battle, with both sides taking heavy damage. Carthage lost 15 ships and was driven from the field, but the Syracusans were also forced to fall back shortly thereafter. The way was now clear for Hannibal, who promptly landed his forces at Motia. The primary objective for the campaign was the Greek city of Acragas. It rivaled Syracuse in size, population, and wealth, while commanding strategic control over central Sicily. But this was no hindrance to Hannibal and his force of 60,000 soldiers. These now quickly advanced upon the city and laid siege to it. However, Acragas had learned from the prior campaigns and was ready for this. They had culled all the crops from around the city to deprive the enemy of food,
Good stuff.
whilst building up a massive reserve of supplies within their own walls.
Getting all the supplies
Thus
they
it was
can.
with confidence that they rejected Carthaginian offers for surrender. Anticipating this, Hannibal tightened his stranglehold upon the city and began to deploy his siege engines. As the weeks dragged on, however, an unforeseen enemy would strike. Plague broke out in the camp
Yep,
of the besiegers.
there goes the
It's
plagues.
unclear as to the cause, but Diodorus Siculus, a Greek himself, claims that the Carthaginians had drawn the ire of the gods by desecrating Greek tombs. Whatever the case, thousands of men died, including the great general Hannibal himself.
Oh,
But his
there goes
ambitious
Hannibal.
spirit would live on in Himilco, who redoubled the army's commitment to the siege with the construction of additional fortifications. This proved fortuitous, as a large Syracusan relief force arrived to lift the siege. These managed to defeat the Carthaginians in open battle, but could not drive them out from their defensive positions.
I mean, you
As
can't
a
drive
result,
them out, but they're
they set up
already
to now build
sick.
their own wall of encirclement around the Punic force. Plagued with disease, and now facing the prospect of starvation, Himilco's forces were in a terrible position as winter began to set in. They would need a miracle to survive. Luckily for him, that miracle appeared in the form of the Carthaginian navy. In a dramatic naval ambush outside the city, the Punic fleet surprised a Syracusan supply convoy and sank or captured the entirety of its escort force. In doing so, they seized a massive hoard of grain.
There
Now,
goes all
it
that
was
food
the
they had.
Carthaginian army
The
whose
advantage
depots
of.
overflowed with food, while those of Acragas began to dwindle. The balance of power now shifted back in Himilco's favor. Diodorus Siculus claims that Himilco recognized the leverage he had over his foe and gave them an out. Citizens would now be given a window to leave through designated corridors. Immediately, 40,000 people fled the city. This had the desired effect of completely liquidating the defenses of Acragas, which was left a husk of its former self. The following day,
There was a lot
under
of people.
a crisp and cloudy December sky, Acragas fell to the assault of the Carthaginian army. Throughout the entire winter, the Carthaginian army camped within the city, looting everything they could get their hands on. The wealth of this great city was well renowned, and the spoils must have been unimaginable. Finally, in 405 BC, with the bones of Acragas picked clean, a fattened Carthaginian army lumbered off to rejoin their fleet. They left behind the smoldering ruins of a city once hailed as the jewel of Sicily. It would never
Well, there
again
goes
regain
that
its
major
former glory.
city.
Himilco now proceeded to make a victory lap around Sicily. Along the way, he took a host of Sicilian cities, tearing through the defenses of Gela when it resisted, sacking Camarina, and even
Damn.
defeating a Syracusan army sent against them. Only the gods seemed capable of stopping the
Lost.
Carthaginians with another plague. It was at this point that Himilco finally came to the peace table. Owing to his successes, the terms were incredibly favorable. Carthage would remain in control of its recent conquests, with Selinus, Thermi,
Yeah,
Acragas,
that's a lot of
Gela, and
land.
Camarina all bowing down as tributary vassals. Sicily had a new master.
Carthage is really
In the
taking
year
over.
405 BC, the island of Sicily was a smoking ruin. The recent offensive by Carthage had created a situation in which the Punic power was now poised to take control of all of Sicily. Only one thing stood in their way: Syracuse.
They've been
The
holding
mighty
for a
Greek city-state,
while.
which had long resisted their influence,
They also
now
really
seemed
like
ready to
using
fall
this
as well.
image.
But in this hour of need would rise the hero and tyrant Dionysius, whose bold new leadership would change the course of the war.
Alright. After we watch about him, I
In
might
Syracuse's darkest hour,
end it because it's gonna be a bit of a shorter stream than normal, but I'm tired. I did this much later than I was planning. So we're gonna watch to 50 minutes in which case it will start the new part. The third time the war. The fourth war. Yeah, and tomorrow we'll pick up on the fourth war, fifth war, sixth war, seventh, and the seventh war. So watch 4 through 7 next time and finish off this.
they would be saved by an unlikely hero. The man's name was Dionysius. He was a lowly public official who had spent the last few years as a clerk lost in the bureaucracy of his home city. And yet, the fates decreed a very different thread for his life.
Okay.
When the Second Punic Sicilian War broke out in 410 BC, Dionysius was among those to answer the call to arms. With great ambition and a knack for organization, he quickly worked his way through the ranks.
So he was good
Details
at
are sparse,
strategy.
but it seems that around 409 BC, he had attained significant stature within the army with a string of achievements to his name. This is evidenced by the fact that when Carthage had launched its assault upon Acragas in 406 BC, Dionysius was tapped to join the army command staff. Though Carthage was ultimately victorious, the Syracusans continued to fight a dogged defense of their eroding territory. Eventually, the plague-stricken invaders decided that they had made enough gains and settled a new peace before withdrawing their main force from the island. This was a very delicate time on Sicily, as all knew that Carthage would eventually return to finish the job.
Yeah,
if given the
Carthage is
opportunity.
always going to be back
In
at this
Syracuse,
point.
some considered reconciliation, while others argued for resistance. It was precisely these cracks in the political scene which created an opportunity for Dionysius. The plot he concocted was bold and nefarious. It began by seemingly faking an assassination attempt on his own life. Here, the perpetrator
Okay.
was caught just in time, allowing Dionysius to draw public sympathy and attention.
Huh.
With this supposed threat as an excuse, he was given permission to hire 600 mercenaries for personal protection within the city limits. Shortly thereafter, though, he expanded the
Lot of
armed group to
guards.
1,000, staffing it with many loyal followers. At this point, Dionysius now made his moves openly. Cutting through the democratic red tape which had shackled his ambitions, he now deployed his mercenary forces across Syracuse to act
Just
as a police
taking
force
over.
and to seize control. Democratic opposition was silenced, and all rebellion was crushed. By 405 BC, Dionysius
Fast
was
and
now the
efficient.
tyrant of Syracuse.
Can't blame him.
In theory, his largest threat would have been the other Greek communities which might seek to depose him. For instance, Sparta had a history of intervening abroad to topple tyrannical regimes. However, in this case, they
Sparta.
actually sent an emissary to strike a deal of mutual support. Sparta, which had previously sided with Syracuse against the Athenians, hoped that the favor might be returned. In exchange, they seem
Okay.
to have given Dionysius the privilege of conscripting mercenaries from the lands under Spartan authority.
Oh.
Thus, with his
Some
reign
more
protected
troops.
at home and on the eastern flank, the tyrant now prepared to turn west against Carthage. But this would be no easy task. In the years that followed, he would
Yeah,
further
Carthage
consolidate
has a
power
lot
and
more
begin
land.
an intense period of militarization, which would turn Syracuse into an impregnable fortress. The tyrant now made ready for war. Dionysius would eventually field an army of 80,000 soldiers and a fleet
That's a
of
lot
200
of
warships. This
troops.
enormous force would require mountains of supplies to equip and maintain. Thus it was
Hmm.
that one of his most important reforms was the introduction of standardized gear. Whereas mercenaries and
Okay.
citizen soldiers had previously been responsible for this kit, Syracuse now sought to create one of the greatest state armories of its era. To this end, we are told that smiths from across Sicily, Italy, Greece, and beyond were commissioned to
Yeah,
produce at least
I remember that. Like a
140,000
lot
sets
of
of weapons and
back
armor.
then, you were
In
responsible
addition,
for getting
the
your own
engineers and
stuff, and
carpenters
you
of
just have
Syracuse
something that
were busy
identified your side.
retrofitting the
But
fleet
now
and
he
constructing the new
wants
hulking class of
stuff
quinquereme
that's like,
warships,
this
which
is
were
who you
about
for
20% longer
set
than the standard
uniforms.
trireme and carried almost double the number of rowers and marines. In addition, all manner of artillery pieces and siege equipment were assembled. Yet even during this period of preparation, Dionysius did not sit idle within the walls of his city. Syracusan forces mounted escalating raids against the villages and cities of Sicily to probe
Okay.
Carthage's hold on this territory and to begin exerting pressure on the various communities to reconsider their allegiance. By 398 BC, 7 years after taking power, Dionysius was finally ready to make his move. The
Alright.
armies of
Let's see
Syracuse
what
were
he
marshaled,
does.
and an ultimatum was thrown down. Carthage must abandon its hegemony or prepare for war. Hardly waiting for the inevitable response, the tyrant now launched his invasion. The objective appears to have been to take the Punic stronghold of Matia on the far side of the island before a proper defense could be mounted. Therefore, the Syracusan
Fast.
forces made a rapid advance
Efficient.
along the southern coast, leaving a trail of destruction in their path. Carthaginians and collaborators were murdered
Cool.
out of
You're
hand,
just
with their
destroying
property
everything.
being looted to fill the coffers of the army. Sensing that the winds of change were blowing, opportunistic Sicilians joined the army as it marched. By the time
Got
Dionysius
some
reached the
backup
gates of
now.
Matia in the summer of 398 BC, his army numbered at least 80,000 infantry.
That's a lot of
The city of
troops.
Matia was one of the greatest Carthaginian strongholds in Sicily. Founded shortly after the city of Carthage around 800 BC, it was located atop an island inside a natural harbor. As such, it proved a highly defensible and well-connected site,
Yeah,
which
that's a
quickly
good
led
place
to
to
Matia's
defend.
rise as a great commercial and military center. By the time the Syracusans arrived, it was a formidable city with a full wall, over 20 towers, and several fortified gatehouses.
Cool.
Adding to its protection, the mole,
That's a
the
lot
only way
of
to access the
stuff.
city on foot, had been destroyed by the citizens. Yet this would not
Fair
deter
enough.
Dionysius. He now anchored his entire fleet in the bay to cut off the city by sea, while
Yep.
tasking his army with the job of rebuilding the mole to prepare for a direct assault if Matia refused to
So
surrender.
now they're just trapped.
Some inside may have considered this option. Yet the bloody advance waged by the Syracusans thus far led many to believe that this path would lead to either death or enslavement.
Probably,
Thus,
yeah.
as the noose tightened around Matia, they sent envoys to Carthage, seeking desperate aid. The Phoenicians, meanwhile, were unprepared for the lightning speed with which Dionysius had launched his campaign. The last Carthaginian offensive had taken years of preparation. And yet, realizing
That's
that
not
the
good
fall
for
of Matia
them.
and in turn Punic Sicily could undo centuries of progress, they now scrambled to summon a response. Himilco, brother of the Hannibal who had led the Second Punic Sicilian War, was appointed command, while a fleet of 100 triremes and tens of thousands of troops were marshaled. These now set off immediately for Matia. Himilco's timing was fortuitous. The Carthaginians managed to catch the forces of Dionysius in the bay, trapping his larger navy in its narrow confines. To make matters
Ouch.
worse, the huge transport fleet to the south lay dangerously exposed. Its defenders were overwhelmed, and the nearly 500 ships were either captured or set afire. In theory, the remaining Syracusan ships still outnumbered those
Shouldn't
of
have
Himilco,
dropped his
and featured many
defense.
of the new, powerful conquirums. However, the geography of the bay meant that these could not bring their numbers to bear against the Carthaginians for a breakout. Himilco was thus assured that by holding the mouth of the harbor, he could either win in battle or starve them out. And yet Dionysius was not so easily bested. Using slingers, archers, and his new war machine, the catapult, the Carthaginians were kept at arm's length from his fleet. This allowed him to now
Okay.
begin hauling his ships over the low, flat spit of land to his north. Soon, many Greek warships had been portaged across the strait and could
They
circle
really
around
just
the rear
picked
of
up
the
their boats and
Carthaginians.
walked around.
In this way, would their roles be reversed? With the risk of
That's
encirclement
wild.
and annihilation, Himilco was thus forced to retreat back to Carthage. As they sailed off, the citizens of Matia knew that their last hope of rescue had vanished. But this realization also brought with it a great fighting zeal. Though alone, they now prepared for a final stand. Dionysius rose to the challenge by redoubling his efforts to construct the land bridge to the city while covering his operations with the
Doing a lot of
siege
it.
engines and towers. Finally, these reached the wall and broke through a section. What followed was bloody urban warfare. Here is how Diodorus Siculus
Lots of
describes the scene.
bloodshed.
Quote, "The Matians, as they took account of the magnitude of the peril, and with their wives and children before their eyes, fought the more fiercely out of fear for their fate. There were some whose parents stood by, entreating them not to let them be surrendered to the lawless will of victors, who were thus wrought to a pitch where they set no value on life. Others, as they heard the laments of their wives and helpless children, sought to die like men, rather than to see their children led to captivity. Flight, of course, from the city was impossible, since it was entirely surrounded by the sea, which was controlled by
No
the
way
enemy.
out. Gotta fight till
The
the
battle grew
end.
fierce, and abundant reinforcements climbed the ladders, until at last the Sicilian Greeks wore down their opponents by weight of numbers. Straight away, Dionysius' entire army burst into the city, coming also by the mole, and now every spot was a scene of mass slaughter. For the Sicilian Greeks, eager to return cruelty for cruelty, slew everyone they encountered, sparing without distinction not a child, not a woman, not an elder. Dionysius, wishing to sell the inhabitants into slavery for the money he could gather, at first attempted to restrain the soldiers from murdering the captives. But when no one paid any attention to him, and he saw the fury of the Sicilian Greeks was not to be controlled, he
Yeah, they
stationed
just
heralds
wanted to murder.
cry aloud and tell the Matians to take refuge in the temples which were revered by the Greeks. The massacre which unfolded was absolute.
Basically told them to actually
In the
go to the
aftermath,
temples
as
where
the
they
campaign season
wouldn't
drew to a
die,
close,
even if it
the
was to
Syracusan
make them
army finished picking
slaves.
the bones of Matia
Then
clean
again,
before returning home
death
to
was
Syracuse.
probably better.
A small garrison force remained to lay claim to the ashes, while Dionysius drew plans for the next year's ambitious campaigning. But he was not the only one with a taste for blood. The Carthaginians now fully understood the magnitude of the threat at hand and also spent the winter months mustering a massive force. When Dionysius emerged from Syracuse in 397 BC, he was
War
countered
as
by
usual.
Himilco, who deployed 400 triremes and 50,000 soldiers on the western end of the island.
Ourselves
Neither
another
side
big
was
battle
immediately
coming up.
prepared for a pitched fight, and instead sought to better position themselves. For Himilco, this meant re-establishing Carthage's authority. Next, he set about lifting the siege of Segesta and establishing Punic garrisons to re-secure western Sicily. To press matters further, Himilco now made an assault on the eastern side of the island. Sweeping around the northern coast, he collected tribute from Lipara and eventually made a landing at Cape Palorum.
That's
This
a
feat
lot.
drew out the Greek army from Messene, at which point a detachment of the Carthaginian fleet, filled with pick rowers and marines, quickly sailed around their rear to seize and sack the city. Soon after, the main two fleets would clash at sea in 397 BC at the Battle of
Who
Catania.
won?
Here, Himilco
Oh, that's a lot of
fielded some 200
ships.
triremes and 300 transports, retrofitted with rams, while Dionysius deployed a mix of 180 triremes and the new quinqueremes. According to
I'm
Diodorus
curious how
Siculus,
this went.
the naval battle began in the Greeks' favor when their admiral, Leptines, led a sudden sally of an elite force. However, he was ultimately driven to flight, leaving the rest of his fleet leaderless and disorganized in the face of the ensuing Carthaginian counterattack. Though the
Not
Greek
so good.
quinqueremes were larger and far better manned than the Punic triremes, the smaller ships were able to lock them down with grapples and shoot, swarm, or ram them into oblivion. When the battle was finished and the Syracusan fleet crushed, the Carthaginians showed no mercy, sweeping along the coast to kill any Greeks attempting to swim back to shore. Accordingly, the coasts of Sicily became choked with the corpses and broken timbers of the defeated navy. This was a catastrophic defeat for Dionysius. Now in the back foot,
Yeah.
he was forced to retreat back within the walls
Honestly,
of
though, I could have
Syracuse.
seen that coming with the amount of
This
ships
was a prudent move.
that they had.
After all, Syracuse was among the largest and most fortified cities in the Greek world. It had withstood the might of the Athenian expedition, and since then had only further been fortified by the ambitious building programs of Dionysius.
Fair
And yet
enough.
Himilco
Very
was undaunted.
fortified.
He first conducted military and diplomatic operations around eastern Sicily to strip Syracuse of its supporters. Then, he set up his army to choke off its land approaches whilst deploying the fleet to blockade the harbor. A camp was then established to the west of the city, and battle was offered. When the Syracusans refused to emerge, this greatly increased the morale of the attackers. For the next 30 days, they were left to ravage the countryside with impunity. Syracuse would have begun to starve out were it not for their ability to maintain an intermittent supply line from their eastern docks.
Well,
Thus,
so
the
they did
winter
have
months were
some
spent
ships in
in
and
an
out.
uneasy stalemate. But with the arrival of spring came a thawing of this inactivity. Soon, the Carthaginians made probing attacks upon the city and are said to have even penetrated one of its outer districts. Yet Syracuse, too, was able to mount its own sallies, raids, and ambushes. The tide began to shift when the Greeks received crucial food and military convoys and were able to win a series of skirmishes at sea.
Oh,
But the
they're
true
getting
turning point came
reinforcements
with
now.
the arrival of the plague.
And the plague
In a
is
similar
back
manner to
once
the Athenians
more.
before them, the Carthaginian forces were crippled by this calamity. Now, Dionysius was able to finally make his move. On a moonless night, forces were sent to circle out around the Punic camp and attack it from the rear at first light. At this
Ambush.
precise moment, the Greek fleet would sail out en masse to assault the Carthaginian naval positions in the front. This coordinated attack caught Himilco's forces by surprise. Chaos reigned in the camp as units overwhelmed the Punic forts on the hills while cavalry and triremes assailed the anchored fleet along the shore.
That'll do it
himself
alright.
was said to have ridden into the fray and helped light the fires which began to spread to the embattled camp. And yet, Himilco's force stood resolute. They managed to recover from the initial shock, maintaining the line and surviving until nightfall. The army may have lived, but the siege of Syracuse was over.
Yeah, that was a lot of damage that they took
From
because of
this
that.
victory, Dionysius was in a position to destroy the Carthaginians outright. And yet, in the dead of night, he agreed to meet secretly with Himilco to discuss terms of peace. This perplexing move is a fascinating example of the Machiavellian mind of the Syracusan tyrant. It seems that he saw the Carthaginian threat as a useful tool in domestic politics. With the threat effectively neutralized, but not outright removed, Dionysius could continue to use it as leverage against his rivals and any who
Fair
might
enough.
challenge his rule. And so, with the addition of receiving a massive bribe of 300 silver talents, he agreed to allow Himilco to sail out with 40 ships bearing only the Carthaginian citizens. When their departure was reported by the Greek sentries, Dionysius made a show of pursuing them, but delayed just enough to allow them to escape. He then led the army to the Punic camp to deal with all who were not protected by the terms of the deal. Having been abandoned, many of the Greek and Sicilian allies melted into the hills. The remaining forces were surrounded. Apparently, the fierce Iberian mercenaries stood ready to fight to the death, but were merely hired by Dionysius, using the money from their former commander.
So
The
they were
remainder
just
of the Punic
hired.
army,
It's like,
which included
we'll fight,
substantial
but
numbers of
immediately
Lydians,
just gets
was
hired
enslaved.
instead. Not bad move
Upon
at
Himilco's
all.
return to Carthage, this shameful event caused an uproar. Not only was the army defeated abroad, threatening the strategic control of Sicily, but the abandonment of the allies and mercenaries now threatened the stability of the homeland itself. Indeed,
Yep.
the Libyans soon broke out into revolt. The rebels grew in such numbers that 70,000 of them were said to have besieged the city of Carthage. To make matters
That's
worse,
a lot of
plague was
rebels.
also reported to have swept across Africa.
And they got the plague
displeasure of the
again.
Carthaginian gods was
The Carthaginian. They got a lot. Also, I know I've been butchering the name, but they're getting a lot of
apparent to all.
plagues from what it sounds like.
Himilco, the man held responsible for this chain of disasters, is likely to have been castigated by the court of 104. Our records indicate that while he was not given the traditional punishment of execution by crucifixion, there would be no path for redemption. It was said that the shamed general accepted full responsibility for the disaster, and now took up the robes of a slave, left to shamble to all the temples of the city, begging for forgiveness. In a final act,
I mean, at least he got to
then bricked
live.
himself into his own home, refusing all aid until he starved to death. How the mighty of
Well,
Carthage
never
had
mind. I
fallen.
guess he did die anyway.
Meanwhile, Dionysius in Sicily was at the height of his power. The tyrant now prepared to prosper at his enemy's expense.
All right, and like I said, due to me being kind of tired, we're not going to do as long of a stream. It's only been about an hour. I was hoping to maybe do this and something else, maybe look into it some more. So, unfortunately, I'm ending it here. Next time, though, we're going to finish this up. We're going to watch some other stuff. If we don't finish it, whatever we start next time after this, oh well, because the stream after that, I do actually want to do something new and actually read some D&D horror stories. See what we can find. See if we can't find any interesting ones, or, well, just get stuck with the usual horror stories that you hear about. Alrighty, alrighty. Back again. We're watching some more of the Forgotten Punic Wars. We're going to finish it up today. I do have to go somewhere, though, at 5, so this won't be as long.
Over the course of 3 bloody wars, Carthage had tightened its grip on the island of Sicily. And yet, on the precipice of its success, Dionysius of Syracuse had rallied his city to not only hold them at bay, but to throw them back.
Gotta get myself kind of centered for this.
Plague and civil unrest, the tyrant would now take his chance to fulfill his life's work. All of Sicily and beyond would be his, even if he had to do it himself.
Okay. And we got an ad, I think.
In a final act,
nope,
Himilco
just a little pause.
bricked himself into his own home, refusing all aid until he starved to death. How the mighty of Carthage had
yeah, I remember this. Reset us some. Let's go back.
Over the course of 3 bloody...
Yeah, I don't know why I went back so much.
The city of Rhegium...
Right there is where we were at. There we go. Not where we're supposed to be.
Out of the picture, Dionysius' first move was to resecure local control. This was done by rebuilding his forces and bullying the communities of Sicily back onto his side.
Yeah, that's a good way to get people to listen to you.
Came from the Sicyl tribes and Ionian Greeks of the northeast, which had recently suffered at the tyrant's hands. The city of Rhegium in particular posed a threat, in that it had arisen in might with the destruction of Messana, which gave it control of the important straits between Sicily and Italy. To make matters worse, when Dionysius had attempted to arrange an alliance by seeking one of their noble daughters in marriage, the people of Rhegium merely offered him the executioner's daughter.
That's kind of funny.
Became a great game of political and military maneuvers over control of eastern Sicily. Part of this involved the founding of various colonies and the relocation of wartime refugees to secure strategic control of key regions. This was done by both sides, with the peoples of the land serving as pawns in their schemes. Dionysius knew that winning this contest would take time, and that while engaged, it would leave him susceptible to a two-front war should Carthage attack from the west. He therefore
does Carthage attack, though?
Central Sicani and Sicyl tribes, who might act as a buffer. As a part of this political realignment, the cities of Agrarium, Hermitage, and Asaurus pledged their loyalty, while the cities of Solus
getting bigger.
and Kefladium were supposedly betrayed to the tyrant and sacked.
Ouch, that was fast.
Would focus his efforts on the east. Thus, in 394 BC, he raised a large army which likely boasted around 20,000 infantry and several thousand cavalry. His main target was the city of Tauromenium. It was actually a hilltop stronghold which had been built up by the Carthaginians and filled with sickles just 3 years prior, with the express purpose of serving as a bulwark against Syracusan expansion.
That's a good enough strategy, I guess.
The Greek army approached from the south, camping in the ruins of Naxos before continuing their advance against Tauromenium. Such a move would not have gone unnoticed. After all, the city lay perched atop the 200-meter-tall Mount Taurus and held a commanding view of the region. In addition, it was surrounded by cliffs, ravines, and high walls, which made a direct assault impossible without significant investment. Nonetheless, Dionysius was determined to take it. Operations apparently began quite late in the year, as the Greeks established their encircling positions before settling down in the lowland region of Naxos to wait out the defenders.
Another
the
siege.
Were well prepared and managed to hold on until the winter months approached.
Oh yeah, not normally camp out during the winter.
Down. And yet for Dionysius, this idle time was an opportunity to scheme. As the snow fell heavily upon Mount Taurus,
always
it was
thinking
reported that the guards of Tauromenium had grown lax in their watch. This was the precise moment Dionysius had been waiting for. Upon a moon...
Forget the relaxed part. I'd hate that. I'd be freezing to death.
Stormy night, he summoned a picked force of 600 mercenaries. Together, they navigated the ravines of the mountains before coming to the base of the enemy's Acropolis. Here, they made sure to secure any loose belongings and cover any flashing metal before beginning the ascent. Wet darkness they
sneaky.
The jagged cliffs and howling winds likely took their toll on the men, but Dionysius pressed on. Eventually, the infiltrators had reached the top. Now,
I'm actually curious
600
how
men
many
swarmed over
fell
the
now
battlements,
that he says
silencing
that.
the sentries and slaying any garrisons they came upon. By the light of dawn, it appeared that Dionysius' bold gamble had paid off. However, alarms were soon raised across the city as the defenders were roused from their beds. Soon, these had gathered enough of their wits and their numbers to launch a counterattack. Dionysius and his commandos may have been able to hold their advance in check initially, but with exhaustion setting in and no source of reinforcements, it was only a matter of time before a breach was formed by a persistent assault. Eventually, this came, and it washed over the Syracusans.
Kind of surprised they didn't take maybe I'm wrong, but this looks like a gate. I'm kind of surprised they didn't just try to take the gate so troops could move in. But at the same time, I'm not a strategist. I'm sure there was a reason they didn't.
Like a great tide, wiping out vast swaths of the 600 mercenaries in the blink of an eye. These quickly sought the only escape available to them, the very cliffs that they had scaled that night.
Oh,
We
that's
are told
yeah,
that as men tumbled off the ravines, many lost their armor and their lives.
yeah.
Dionysius was one of the few to make it out alive.
He's
Rather
just
than
built
face
different to
ultimate
still be
humiliation,
going.
the tyrant now lifted the siege and withdrew his army to lick his wounds back home. While Dionysius may have averted any immediate disaster with his withdrawal,
Oh, did
his
he get
removal
bigger?
did have wider strategic consequences. For instance, the Greek cities of Acragas and Messana deposed their Syracusan supporting leaders and garrisons, while others began to reassess their allegiances. This wavering posed an opportunity for Carthage to exploit. After
Yeah,
several years of
the boys
crippling
Carthage are
distractions,
coming
the
back.
African power had finally emerged from the chaos thanks to the generalship of Mago, the victor of the Battle of Catana. He had helped defeat the Libyan uprising and next led forces to Sicily. At first, Carthage had been wary of directly engaging with Dionysius and instead spent its time shoring up support on the western side of the island
Yeah, it's
and
always good
playing
to
the
have some
part of
backup.
a benevolent overlord which stood in contrast to the tyrant of Syracuse. Yet following Dionysius' stumble at Tauromenium, Mago now pounced at the opportunity for direct confrontation. In 393 BC, the Punic general launched an expedition across the northern side of the island. The size of the force goes unreported, but it was apparently large enough to raid Messana. Upon turning back, they would be
No clue how that
intercepted by a
big that
pursuing
was, though, to be
Dionysius.
honest.
The two clash at the Battle of Abacanum, with Mago being defeated and forced to seek shelter in the nearby city.
Oh,
Yet
well,
both
never
sides would
mind.
soon part ways in what appears to have been more of a strategic joust than an all-out
Yeah,
war.
a
The
little
next
bit
year,
of jousting.
Mago would receive reinforcements from Carthage and mustered a large force that may have boasted as many as 40 to 50,000 men. The actions of the fleet are not mentioned, and so it is assumed that this year's campaign saw Mago lead his forces across the interior of Sicily.
So he
His
just kind of
objective
marched a bit
appears to
and
have
didn't
been to chip
report
away at the
anything
Sicyl
for
communities
the
which
most
were
part, it
siding with
seems.
Syracuse.
That's a bummer.
Such a challenge could not go unanswered. Dionysius mustered his own army and advanced to meet them. However, we are told that his army was far smaller. As a result, he relied on asymmetrical tactics to stall Mago's advance. Mountain
Smart
passes
move.
and high ground positions were held stubbornly by the Greeks, while raiders were sent incessantly to harass the Punic supply lines. And yet, Carthage remained undeterred and continued its slow advance. It was only through a great deal of negotiating and favorable concessions that Dionysius managed to secure the military support of the powerful city of Agrium. Together, the Greeks were able to prevent Carthage from steamrolling through the territory. And yet, they were
Kind
still
of surprised he
outnumbered.
still has so many people he can
Dionysius
keep
chose to
mustering
continue his
up
delay tactics
with
in the
the
hopes that
constant
Carthage might be
fighting
too
they
worn
keep
down to
doing.
fight, or that plague might once again prove his savior. However, as the weeks rolled by, neither materialized. Instead, it was the Syracusan forces which began to lose morale and desert. The situation got so bad that Dionysius reportedly freed and armed slaves to refill his ranks.
Yeah,
Thankfully,
that's how
this was
you know
not
he's
something
getting
that was noticed
desperate.
by Carthage. The invaders had their hands full with other problems. Thus, as the stalemate dragged on, it seems that both Mago and Dionysius found a de-escalation to their mutual advantage. Therefore, the two leaders came to the peace table willingly. The treaty, which was hammered out, essentially formalized either side's control of East and West Sicily. For Dionysius, this meant finally formalizing a decade's worth of territorial expansion, whilst giving him free rein to play
Nice.
kingmaker among the Sicyl communities of the East. Carthage, meanwhile, gained clear dominion over the Phoenician and Elmian communities of the West,
So a bit
which
of
would allow them
peace.
to focus on their lucrative mercantile endeavors. The deal would stand for nearly a decade.
Okay, they
Yet
almost
this
made
did
it
not
10
bring peace to
years.
Sicily. Dionysius was merely freed to continue his wars with his other rivals. This meant first securing control over eastern Sicily by rooting out the last vestiges of Punic influence. Many cities were brought to heel, and even Tauromenium was taken in a bloodless feat of diplomacy.
Yep.
Next, he set about reviving his feud with Rhegium. This would finally secure his control of the straits between Sicily and Italy and open the door to wider opportunities for expansion across Magna Graecia.
Okay, so it's
In
starting to
these
take over and
campaigns,
move
the
out.
city of Rhegium was put to siege on 3 separate occasions. This would climax in the year 387 BC. It was a brutal affair. Here is how Diodorus Siculus describes Dionysius' callous approach to warfare. Quote, "It was about the 11th month of Dionysius' siege of Rhegium, and since he had cut off relief from every direction, the inhabitants of the city were faced by a terrible dearth of the necessities of life.
Yeah.
So reduced were they, by lack of food, that at first they ate their horses and other beasts of burden, then fed upon boiled skins and leather, and finally they would come out from the city and eat the grass near the walls like so many cattle. When Dionysius learned what was taking place, far from showing mercy to those who were suffering beyond man's endurance, on the contrary, he brought in cattle to clear the place of the greenstone, with the result
Okay, that's
that
messed up,
people
but at the
desperate.
same time kind of funny.
Consequently, the Rhegians, overcome by their excessive hardships, surrender their
Couldn't
city to the
even eat
tyrant,
the
giving him
grass.
complete power over their lives. Within the city, Dionysius found heaps of dead who had perished from lack of food, and the living too.
Can we actually talk about that though? Human guts, I'm pretty sure, can't break down grass too well. So, how much grass do you think one of them had to continuously eat to stay alive?
Whom he captured
That's
were like dead
actually
men and
that's
weakened
actually
in
a good
body.
question I have.
He got
It's
together more than
odd, but
6,000
I'm
captives,
curious
and the
now.
multitudes he sent
How
off
much
to
grass did
Syracuse
someone
with
have to
orders
eat
that
to
those who
survive?
could pay as ransom a mina of silver should be freed, but to sell as slaves those who were unable to raise that sum. In the ensuing campaigns, Dionysius would make war against other cities of Magna Graecia. Along with the Lucranians, he devastated the territories of Thurii and Croton. His fleet even raided as far as the Etruscan coast, pillaging a town just
Huh.
50 kilometers from Rome.
Oh,
On
he's
the
almost
heels
at
of these
Rome.
advances, Dionysius planted additional colonies along the Adriatic coast as far away as Illyria in a bid to control trade and power in the region. But his ambitions did not stop there. During the Corinthian War, Dionysius backed Sparta with mercenaries and ships, and similarly sent troops to fight in Epirus to return King Antipater
That's right.
to
He
the throne.
was with Sparta.
All of these moves were clear signs of Syracuse's growing power in the geopolitics of the era. Perhaps because of these successes, Dionysius finally felt prepared to once again challenge Carthage.
I don't know
Thus,
why they are
in
much
383
bigger than
BC, at
him
the age of 49,
land-wise
he
from what I've
mobilized for
seen on the
war
map.
and renewed open hostilities by allying with cities which had risen in revolt against Carthage. Technically, this chapter of history would be known as the Fourth Punic Sicilian War. However, its scope extended beyond the confines of prior conflicts. Details are lacking, but it seems that Carthage had allied itself with a league of Italian cities and even landed troops to assist them with the campaign along the
Okay.
eastern theater of Magna Graecia. Meanwhile, the western theater of Sicily proper saw large Carthaginian and Syracusan forces jockey with one another. As had happened before, affairs on the island quickly stagnated into a campaign of skirmishing and maneuvering around the
A lot
various
of
communities.
bloodshed on this little
In this
island.
two-front war, neither side was prepared to risk it all in a pitched battle until they felt they had the upper hand. These conditions would not materialize until several years later, when the two sides clashed at the Battle of Cabala. Here, the forces of Syracuse managed to drive the Carthaginians from the field. The Punic army rallied upon a hill, but suffered heavy losses in the days which followed, when they were unable to find a sufficient source of water. Diodorus Siculus claims that 10,000 of their soldiers would perish, including the commanding general, while 5,000 men were taken captive. From this dominant position, Dionysius now laid down his terms for a ceasefire. Carthage must not only pay for the war damages, but must also withdraw entirely from the island of Sicily.
Oh, that's a
Such
big
terms were
advantage
outrageously
on him.
humiliating. Carthage was furious, but facing other troubles abroad, asked for a temporary ceasefire to consider the conditions. Yet this was merely a play for time. In the brief interlude which followed, Punic forces would be heavily drilled and disciplined. When they marched out again in 376 BC, under the command of Himilco Mago, they were a significantly more professional force. Dionysius and his
Oh,
overly
so they
confident
did get
force
pushed back out
rose
of
to victory
land.
at the Battle of Cronium. Here, tens of thousands of men faced off across a wide plain. As the two armies clashed, it proved to be an incredibly tough fight.
Ugh.
Dionysius and his elite forces on the wing were slowly gaining ground against their foes. However, on the opposite side, Himilco managed to more rapidly defeat the forces of Leptines and began to turn the flank. Soon,
Okay.
panic spread across the Syracusan army. This now devolved into a complete rout, with the Carthaginians surging forward, shouting to one another to give no quarter. We are told that 14,000 Syracusans were slaughtered in this butcher's war.
Yeah, that's why you don't turn your back so
Now, it was
fast to run.
Dionysius who was at the mercy of his foe.
That, that
Thankfully,
I don't blame
Carthage
him
had opened
really.
fires to
I
put out
probably would.
and settled on relatively reasonable terms. These re-established the borders which had existed prior to the war, with the added terms that Carthage would now receive the cities of Selinus and Acragas, in addition to 1,000 talents. Sucking in his pride, Dionysius agreed to the deal. After all, he was always one to think 10 steps ahead. The peace would merely be another opportunity for him to plan yet further campaigns.
This man just
For
wanted
8 years,
war.
the tyrant of
Well,
Syracuse
that in
ruled
the
his time.
islands of the
His
entire
great
area,
summer
really.
attentions were turned towards the arts as he brought poets, playwrights, and philosophers to court. Yet there would be no replacement for his hunger for war. Thus, in 368 BC, Dionysius once again sallied out from the fortress
Fix my
of
chair.
Syracuse to make war upon Carthage
That's
with
better.
a mighty army of around 40,000 men and 120 warships. These rapidly advanced upon the city of Eryx. It was taken by surprise, securing a prominent base for the Greek operations deep within Punic territory. Dionysius' next move was to besiege the city of Lilybaeum. It had been founded 30 years ago, following the Greek destruction of Mattia, and now stood as the greatest center of Carthaginian power on the island. This bastion would not be allowed to fall. The Punic garrison held firm for the remainder of the year, forcing Dionysius to return to nearby Eryx for his winter quarters.
Yep.
However, a fleet of 200 Carthaginian ships was already on the move.
Oh,
Avoiding detection, it now launched its own surprise attack upon Eryx. Here, they fell upon the massed Greek fleet at anchor, sinking or capturing vast numbers of ships.
there you go.
This would be a crippling blow. Without naval superiority, the Syracusan land army stood no chance of taking the offense and would now be pushed back to protect its rear from enemy raids and landings.
Yep.
The last grand campaign of Dionysius had collapsed in spectacular fashion.
Oh, is that the last we're going to hear of him?
He nonetheless managed to sign an armistice, which prevented any further erosion of his position.
Never mind.
Be a next time. As a bit of consolation, Dionysius would return home to the news of one great victory. Apparently, his play The Ransom of Hector had won a prestigious competition at the Linnea Festival of Athens. To
Oh,
celebrate and forget the sorrows of the year, he would reportedly throw a massive party, drinking himself into oblivion.
yeah, fair
According to
enough.
some sources, Dionysius would literally drown in alcohol.
Wait, really?
Others claim that it would be a conspiracy of his kin, which finally brought low the tyrant of Syracuse that night.
Did he basically just drink himself? He just died from alcohol poisoning. He did all that, lost the war, then drank himself to death. What a way to
Whatever
go.
the case, Dionysius would be dead at the age of 65. He left behind a legacy that would be unmatched by any of his predecessors or forebears. For the 38 years of his reign, Dionysius had fought toe-to-toe with one of the mightiest powers of the Western Mediterranean, whilst building up the position of Syracuse to become one of the greatest in the entire Greek world.
Good job, my
His
man.
role, the methods of his war-making, and the innovations in siege and naval technology would pave the way for the greatest conquerors who came after him, including Alexander the Great.
Hey,
Such
Alexander the
shoes
Great.
would be difficult
That
to
name
fill,
I know.
even for the most capable of heirs. Unfortunately for Syracuse, his son Dionysius II fell far below the mark.
Well,
Foregoing the great
never
affairs
mind.
of state,
Down they
he
go.
turned inward with no care for maintaining the hard-fought works of his father. Plutarch offers the following insight into his actions. Quote, "For it is said that the young king once kept up a drinking bout for 90 consecutive days from its beginning,
90
and that during this time
days?
the court gave no access or admission to men of matters of consequence. But drunkenness
Oh,
and raillery
God.
and music and dancing and
No
buffoonery
wonder
held
he
full
fell
sway.
so hard. 90 days of
And
just
so it
binge
was,
drinking.
with great pleasure, that Carthage watched
He was
as
a
the formidable
frat
house
bro.
of Syracuse began to collapse. The final climax of the Punic-Sicilian Wars loomed on the horizon, but these would be amongst its bloodiest.
I'm guessing this is where we're going to get one of our
10,000 men
winners.
crests a hill to overlook a plain shrouded in fog. As the mists part, it reveals a vast Carthaginian army led by none other than the Sacred Band. But rather than retreat, their commander orders a charge. This man was Timoleon, and he was about to make history at the Battle of Crimesis.
Okay, Battle of Kinesis. Let's see what happens.
During his 38-year reign, Dionysius of Syracuse had dictated the geopolitical agenda of Sicily with his ambitious plans. His death therefore created a power vacuum, which the factions of the island were keen to exploit. For a time, his son, Dionysius II, was able to maintain some semblance of control, thanks to the
We got
strong
about 40
influence of his
minutes
uncle,
left
Dion.
of
But
the
when
video.
the steward to the throne invited Plato to help reform the government, Dionysius ultimately joined his rivals and banished his uncle. What followed would be a struggle of political and armed conflict between the two men, which lasted nearly a decade. All of this bickering
Here comes the infighting
the
part that brings all good
as many
nations
of
and
broke away
things
in
back then
favor
to
of
an
the
end.
rule of their own regional tyrants. During this time, many Syracusans were fed up with the strife which was tearing apart their city. A great number of them therefore joined Hycetus, the Syracusan-born tyrant of Leontini, in his bid to oust Dionysius. Others, meanwhile, appealed to their mother city of Corinth for help. However, its leaders were wary of lending aid, considering the seemingly hopeless task of establishing a stable government in tyrannical, fractious, insecure, and turbulent Syracuse.
Yeah,
and yet
that's
one
fair.
nobleman, Timoleon,
I don't
would
blame
accept
him.
this mission.
Oh, he
Together
did do
with
it.
around 1,000 mercenaries aboard 7 ships, he set sail for Sicily. In 344 BC, he evaded efforts to block his arrival and landed near Tauromenium, where he was met by local supporters. This force now advanced upon nearby Adranum. When Hycetus moved to intercept them with 5,000 men, the outnumbered Corinthian force in turn surprised and defeated them in an evening attack. This unexpected reversal caused other
All
Greeks of
that
Sicily
to
to
lose.
now join Timoleon, and even prompted Corinth to send reinforcements. The Carthaginians, meanwhile, grew alarmed at this escalating situation. Historians report that as a result, they deployed a fleet and army to the island under the command of Mago.
That's
which
fair. Take
boasted around
advantage of the
150
weakness.
ships and 50,000 men.
Let's see this
Supposedly, they had
battle.
already been in secret negotiations with Hycetus to support him indirectly. Now, however,
So they were
an
already
increasingly
ready for
desperate
this to
Hycetus
happen. They
called
were
for
just
direct
waiting to
intervention.
hear.
Diodorus and Plutarch offer slightly differing accounts of what happened next. Apparently, the Carthaginians established a blockade around eastern Sicily to deny Corinthian reinforcements and to choke out the remaining forces of Dionysius still besieged within the island fortress of Syracuse. As a counter, Dionysius offered his citadel to the Corinthians on condition that he be granted a comfortable exile in Greece. When this was accepted, Timoleon slipped a garrison to take charge of the Ortygia, whilst leading his main army to take the outskirts of the city. In response, the Carthaginians reportedly moved in their own troops to occupy key areas of Syracuse. If this story is to
That's
be
a
believed,
lot of
then its districts were now
strategy
being
to
divided up
win.
between 3 to 4 separate factions. It's hard to imagine a more chaotic situation. We're told that for a time, Hycetus and Mago led joint efforts against their rivals, but failed to dislodge them. Fearing betrayal, perhaps believing the entire situation was foobar, Mago apparently decided to withdraw his forces entirely. Such a move was not unreasonable. After all, his predecessor Himilco had become trapped in a similar situation whilst besieging Syracuse and only barely escaped with his life and a fraction of his army. Yet while this withdrawal
Okay, so he's using
it effectively
his
handed
head.
control of
He's not going to
Syracuse
fall like his
Timoleon,
ancestor.
who now
He's
swept in
running.
with his army. His first move was to actually restore the democratic government of Syracuse, symbolically destroying the tyrant's citadel and replacing it with the court of justice.
Court
Plutarch
of
mentions that he next sought
Justice.
to bring fresh waves of immigrants from across the Greek world to replenish the population which had been ravaged by disease and war. Thus feeling rejuvenated and having settled affairs in the city, Timoleon then sought to depose the other local tyrants, including Hycetus, who had managed to slip away to his city of Leontini. He apparently grew so confident that his mercenaries were given free rein to begin raiding Punic-aligned territories.
Why would you do
Yet
that?
those efforts would not last much longer than a year, when news came of affairs in Africa. Plutarch reports that the Carthaginians had been so furious with Mago's withdrawal that they impaled his body and were preparing for a new invasion to put down the plucky Corinthian upstart. In 339 BC, they descended upon Sicily. Here is how Plutarch paints the picture. Quote, the Carthaginians put in at Lilybaeum with an army of 70,000 men, 200 triremes, and 1,000 transports carrying engines of war, 4-horse chariots, grain in abundance, and other requisite equipment. Their purpose was not to carry on the war by piecemeal anymore, but at one time to drive the invading Greeks out of all Sicily. While numbers here are difficult to accept at face value, it was certainly a mighty force. Its grandeur is
Oh, I think
reinforced
that's
by
the
the
most
idea that
pieces I've
among
seen
them
them
were
actually
the
put on the
Carthaginian sacred
table
band,
for a
an
battle.
elite body of citizen soldiers we've covered in another episode if you want to learn more. Timoleon, by contrast, led a comparatively tiny army of levies and mercenaries. Estimates of its size vary, but he probably had around 10,000 men. While exact troop counts claimed by ancient authors are dubious, the picture that they paint is clear. Timoleon was horribly outnumbered, and yet despite this, he still rose to challenge them. For 8 days, his army marched
Not a
across the
smart
island
move, my
towards the
man.
concentrating Punic force. Along the way, we are told that his army was so terrified that many of them deserted. And yet
Yeah,
Timoleon pressed
figures
on.
as much.
It was early summer when Timoleon reached the Chromesis River. The plain ahead was covered in thick mists. As the Greeks crested a hill to observe the surroundings, their vision was veiled, but they could hear the noise of a vast host on the move. Suddenly, this
Oh,
fog parted, and the truth of what lay ahead was revealed. Here is how Plutarch puts it. Quote, "The Chromesis came into view, and the enemy were seen crossing it. In their van, 4 horse
okay.
chariots formidably arrayed for battle, and behind these 10,000 men-at-arms with white shields. These the Syracusans conjectured to be the
That's a
Carthaginians,
lot of
from the
people to
splendor of
deal
their armor
with.
and the slowness and good order of their march. After these, the other nations streamed on and were making the crossing in tumultuous confusion. Then
Jeez.
Timoleon ordered Demaritus to take the horsemen and fall upon the Carthaginians and throw their ranks into confusion before their array was yet formed. Then he himself, descending into the plain, assigned the wings to the other Sicilian Greeks, uniting a few of his mercenaries with each wing, while he took the Syracusans and the best fighters among his mercenaries under his own command in the center. Then he waited a little while, watching what his horsemen would do, and when he saw that they were unable to come to close quarters with the Carthaginians on account of the chariots which coursed up and down in front of their lines, but were
Yep.
forced to wheel about continually that their ranks might not be broken, and to make their charges in quick succession after facing about,
They gotta move
he
fast
took
for
up his shield
this.
and shouted to his infantrymen to follow and be of good courage, and his voice seemed stronger than usual and more than human, whether it was from emotion that he made it so loud, in view of the struggle and the enthusiasm which it inspired, or whether, as most felt at the time, some deity joined in his utterance. And with that, the Greek vanguard locked shields and fell upon the Carthaginians with the sound of trumpets, while the cavalry struck them from the flanks. The attack took the Carthaginian
Yeah,
army
I think
completely
they'll be
off guard.
fine.
In addition to
Probably.
the shock of the surprise,
Probably
their bodies
not.
were robbed of energy and mobility by the frigid waters. To make matters worse, a storm of freezing rain joined the assault against their front, blinding the army as it struggled to mount a defense. The result was a slaughter. Here is how Plutarch heralds their doom. Quote, "Finally the storm still assailing them, and the Greeks having overthrown their first rank of 400 men, the main body was put to flight. Many were overtaken in the plain and cut to pieces, and many the river dashed upon and carried away to destruction, as they
Alright.
encountered those who were still trying to cross. But most of them the light-armed Greeks ran upon and dispatched as they were making for the hills." Though the sacred band fought valiantly and is said to have stood to the last man, they could not salvage the situation, as the army around them disintegrated. All told,
So they
some
ran off.
10,000 Carthaginians were killed and another 15,000 captured. It was a
That's
loss
a
of
lot
monumental
loss.
proportions. Under normal circumstances, Carthage could stomach this level of attrition when it came to allied soldiers. But here, the loss of some 2,500 citizen lives was said to be so shocking to Carthage that they
They
resolved
lost
to never use citizens
civilians.
again in battle. In the aftermath, the Greeks apparently took so many spoils that it took them several days to erect a victory trophy on the site. The overloaded army then returned to Syracuse to gather forces and make renewed war upon the tyrants of the east.
That's a lot of
The
trophies to
Carthage,
have
meanwhile,
that
was still reeling
much.
from the disaster, but managed to dispatch an admiral by the name of Gisco to render them aid. His troops helped score a series of minor victories against Timoleon. However, the Corinthian would soon manage to defeat Hycetus in the Battle of the Demurius River and Mamercus in the Battle of the Obolus River. Unfortunately, neither
Oh,
of
there
these
goes
are
the
recorded in
rivers.
high detail. What little we do know mentions how the Carthaginians again suffered heavy casualties in the battles. These setbacks prompted them to cut their losses. In 339 BC, a peace treaty was signed that would conclude this Sixth Punic Sicilian War. The terms specified that Carthage
Wait,
was
were
to
we on
remain
the
west of the
6th
Halcyon River,
war?
to cut all alliances
This
to
is
the
going
east,
faster than
and
I
to restore
thought.
family and
Let me
property
check.
to anyone who wished to move to Syracuse. It seemed now that the ghost of Dionysius must have smiled
Well,
upon his
yeah,
turn
we're
of
about to
face.
go on the
And
last
yet,
one, so
the
the
tyrant would be next to
7th
suffer from
war is probably
Timolian's
the
success.
longest,
To start, the
or the
Corinthian was hailed
bloodiest.
as a brave and brilliant military leader who had managed to win an incredible victory in the face of overwhelming odds, overshadowing the successes of Dionysius. What's more, though, is that he did not use this power to rule as a despot. Instead, he remained true to his word, committing himself fully to the democratization of Syracuse by drafting a new constitution which would last for many generations. Under his supervision, the Greeks of Sicily now enjoyed a well-earned period of renewed peace and prosperity. Here is how Plutarch writes of these
And I
matters.
can see where my
Quote,
internet's going
in
down.
this manner, then,
We're not
did
doing
Timoleon
so good.
extirpate the tyrannies and put a stop to their wars. He found the whole island reduced to a savage state by its troubles and hated by its inhabitants. But he made it so civilized and so desirable in the eyes of all men that others came by sea to dwell in the places from which their own citizens used to run away before.
Okay.
To these settlers, Timoleon not only afforded safety and calm after so long a storm of war, but also supplied their further needs and zealously assisted them, so that he was revered by them as a founder. All the other inhabitants also cherished like feelings towards him, and no conclusion of war, no institution of laws, no settlement of victory, no arrangement of civil polity seemed satisfactory unless he gave the finishing touches to it, like a master builder adding to a work that is drawing to completion some grace which pleases gods and men. We are told that rather than return to Greece to pursue
Whoa,
greater
ho,
honors,
ho.
Timoleon
Well, my
instead
model
remained
just
in
glitched
Sicily.
out for a bit
Here
there.
he was lavished with praise by the Syracusans, but remained of humble character, claiming that the gods and fortune were to thank for his successes. Even when he began to lose his vision, the people still turned to him for guidance. When important matters were being discussed, a blind Timoleon would be led into the assembly to render his counsel. And while he could no longer lead them in war, the Syracusans vowed to only employ Corinthian generals for such matters. When it
Fair
finally
enough.
passed,
They really
a grand
liked him.
funeral would be arranged. Several days were taken to prepare the event and to allow the vast numbers of mourners to attend. When the day came, thousands partook in the procession which bore his body to the pyre. When it was lit, Plutarch states, quote, Demetrius, who had the loudest voice of any herald of the time, read from manuscript the following decree. By the people of Syracuse, Timoleon, son of Timodemus from Corinth, is here buried at a public cost of 200 minas, and is honored for all time with annual contests, musical, equestrian, and gymnastic, because he overthrew the tyrants, subdued the barbarians, repopulated the largest of the devastated cities, and then restored their laws to the Greeks of Sicily. Furthermore, they buried his ashes in the marketplace, and afterwards, when they had surrounded it with porticos and built palestras in it, they set it apart as a gymnasium for their young men, and named it the Timoleontum, and they themselves, using the civil polity and the laws which he had ordained, enjoyed a long course of unbroken prosperity and happiness. Such praise was likely genuine to some degree, and yet we must also understand that the favorable treatment of Timoleon by historians came in the context of other important global events. While this Corinthian general was championing the Greek cause in Sicily against the Carthaginians, back at home, his fellow countrymen were struggling. The very same year after Timoleon's victory at the river Croesus, Philip II of Macedon would cement his own victory over the Greeks at the decisive Battle of Chaeronea. Syracuse now stood as one of the last great symbols of Greek independence. Those of the mainland would be
And the
yoked
guy
on the
hold out
aspirations
now.
of Philip and his son Alexander for a grand eastern campaign. Thus, for now, their attention would be distracted, and Sicily once again left isolated. With Timoleon's passing, this left them vulnerable.
Okay. I'm going to pause it right here, right before we get to the next age. I'm going to go grab a drink. Actually, I think I have some water in my room. Check the fridge. I do have. Let me check my fridge. Does it actually need the water? It needs this drained real fast. 1 second, y'all. No, come on, you. There you go. Yeah, so I have some water in my fridge, but my little mini fridge. But Currently, I gotta defrost it because I hadn't used it in a while, so it froze over. Had it too high.
A Greek army stands before the walls of mighty Carthage for the first time in history. But what is even more astonishing than the way in which they arrived here is what they would go on to do next. This is the climax of the Punic Sicilian Wars.
Alright, let's do it. Let's watch the end of it. War number 7.
Timoleon of Corinth had emerged as an unlikely hero to the Greeks of Sicily. Against all odds, he put down the despots, subdued the foreign enemy, recolonized the greatest among the ruined cities, and restored their laws, their constitution, and their democracy. As Plutarch put it, quote,
Yep,
in
bro
less
was
than 8 years,
great
he
at
handed
that.
over to her inhabitants a Sicily purged of her perpetual intestine miseries and complaints. And yet, with the death of Timoleon, came an end to this brief interlude of peace. Without a strong guiding hand, the island reverted to its chaotic ways. Soon,
Well, that
Timoleon's
didn't last
democratic
long.
system in Syracuse became corrupted by factions and morphed into a despotic oligarchy. In this environment, many ambitious men would make a play for ultimate power. One among them would be a man by the name of Agathocles. The son of a potter from the city of Himera, he was an unlikely candidate for this emerging Game of Thrones.
Oh.
Around the age of 18, he had moved to Syracuse to take up his father's profession, but soon joined the army. By the age of 28, the historian Justin claims that he had risen quite high in rank and came into significant wealth through marriage. This then allowed him to start leveraging both to attain greater power. In these efforts, he was apparently banished not once but twice from the city for attempting to overthrow the reigning oligarchs.
He really wants
Ever
to
the
take
persistent
over
man,
then.
he would not so easily be defeated. For several years, Agathocles took up the cause of nearby Morgantina, leading her armies into battle against local rivals such as Leontini. However, in 317 BC, at the age of 44, he now turned his sights against Syracuse. At the head
Going
of
for
a
the
mercenary
throat.
force, Agathocles now laid siege to his former home. In a further twist, the Syracusans called upon their foes, the Carthaginians, for aid. Hamilcar, the current commander of Punic forces in Sicily, responded by sending them a body of several thousand men. As Justin put it, quote, thus, at one and the same time, Syracuse was both defended by an enemy with the love of a citizen, and attacked by a citizen with the hatred of an enemy. But the twist did not stop
Interesting
there.
twist.
Apparently, Agathocles and Hamilcar would now enter secret dealings whereby the Carthaginians would allow the upstart to take Syracuse on condition that he repay them with favorable terms and assurances of peace. When this was agreed to, Agathocles entered the city with his men. It seems that to facilitate this move, he played the part of a new Timoleon, ready to cleanse Syracuse of its despotic rulers and restore democracy. However, here is what Justin describes happened next. Quote, then, as if intending to remodel the Constitution, he ordered the people to be summoned to an assembly in the theater, convoking the Senate in the meantime in the gymnasium, as though he designed to make some previous arrangements with them.
Okay.
His measures thus being taken, he sent his troops to surround the people and caused the Senate to be massacred, and when he had finished the slaughter of them, cut off the richest and boldest of the commoners. Through this reign of terror, Agathocles now enshrined himself as the undisputed tyrant of Syracuse.
I mean, that's one way to definitely do it.
In the footsteps of many of his predecessors by raising a strong army and fleet. These he now unleashed upon Sicily, subduing large parts of the island. Carthage was incensed by these events and the fact that their general seemed to have been colluding with the enemy to further his own ambitions. Thus, the Punic Senate voted to take action against this rogue commander. The gods, however, would act first. Hamilcar would die before the wrath of Carthage could be unleashed upon him. Instead, it would now be turned upon a
Was it the plague,
who had
maybe?
already begun raiding Punic allies. In 311 BC, Carthage raised a fleet of 130 triremes and several hundred supply ships to carry a force of 14,000 soldiers, including citizens, Libyans, Balearics, and mixed mercenaries. At their helm was Hamilcar, son of Gisco. Yet while they set off with great zeal, the ocean tempered their passion with a storm.
Ocean kills a lot of them.
Winds and waves claimed almost half of the fleet. Thankfully, when they arrived in Sicily, they would be reinforced by the Carthaginians already on the island, by local allies, and by additional mercenaries. Soon their forces swelled to around 40,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. With little delay, they began to advance. Hamilcar led his forces towards the Syracusan-held city of Gela. Fearing the loss of this important bastion, Agathocles moved to counter them with an army of almost equal size. The two sides soon found themselves encamped atop hills to either side of the Himera River. From such a position, the advantage would go to the defender of any engagement. Thus it was that
That's
for many
fair.
days they stood at a stalemate.
Yeah.
To break the impasse, either side now resorted to raids and ambushes on each other's supply lines. At one point, a band of Greeks attempting to rustle Punic livestock were chased off by the Carthaginians. However, as these reached the river, Agathocles set upon them with an ambush. Such an event was not too uncommon. However, this time, the tyrant decided to follow up on this skirmish by suddenly mobilizing his entire army for a
Oh,
full-scale assault.
he's going for it.
With lightning speed, the Greeks now swarmed over the river and were upon the Punic camp before the Carthaginians had a chance to form a battle line.
Oh,
As the palisades began to fall, a fierce battle ensued all along the ditch and rampart. Plutarch notes that Hamilcar reacted quickly. Quote, he brought up his slingers who came from the Balearic Islands and numbered at least 1,000. By hurling a shower of great stones, they wounded many and even killed not a few who were attacking, and they shattered the defensive armor of most of them. In this way,
damn,
they drove
those
the Greeks
slings are
from the camp
strong.
and defeated them. But Agathocles continued to attack at other points.
Then
and
again,
indeed
I've
the
seen
camp
like
was
videos
already
of them.
taken
Those
by
slings can
storm
definitely
when
do some
unexpected
damage.
reinforcements from Libya arrived by water for the Carthaginians. Thus again, gaining heart, those from the camp fought against the Greeks in front, and the reinforcements surrounded them on all sides. Since the Greeks were now receiving wounds from an unexpected quarter, the battle quickly reversed itself, and some of them fled into the Hermaeus River, others into the camp. The withdrawal was for a distance of 40 stades, and since it was almost entirely over level country, they were hotly pursued by the barbarian cavalry, numbering not less than 5,000. As a result, the space between was filled with dead, and the river itself contributed greatly to the destruction of the Greeks.
Yeah.
In the afternoon,
Running in an open
Agathocles
field
managed
with
to
your
escape
enemy
with the
behind you is
remainder of
probably
his
not the
army
best
and
strategy
regrouped
of
into the
retreat.
Vaghela. Rather than attack this fortress, Hamilcar set about stripping away the now undefended allies of Syracuse. Many now switched sides. Agathocles, in turn, withdrew to his home base. His prospects for defeating the superior Carthaginian land and sea forces in Sicily were bleak. And yet, it was this very desperation that would bring about a most diabolical plan. First, he would need to recover his strength and his supplies. To this end, we are told that he culled the grain from the surrounding region, borrowed heavily from the merchants, withdrew dedications from the temples, stripped the women of their jewels, confiscated property, carried out purges, and undertook many unholy acts to gain an abundance of wealth. After this, he freed many slaves and armed them while enrolling additional forces to build both a strong garrison and offensive army. Between these, he made sure to split up family members, such that they would not revolt out of fear of what might happen to their relatives. Then, 60 ships were summoned to port for a secret mission. Some believed their purpose was to break the Punic blockade or to raid the enemy's rear lines. However, when it came time to sail, none of these proved accurate. Agathocles shot his fleet like an arrow out to the open sea. The Carthaginians, initially believing this to be a challenge, deployed for battle. Yet when they saw that the Greeks did not do likewise, they gave pursuit. Here is how Justin puts it. Quote,
he sent them on a suicide mission, basically.
The same number of nights, just as day was breaking, the fleet of Carthaginians was unexpectedly seen not far away. At this, both fleets were filled with zeal and vied with each other in rowing. When Libya came into sight, the men on board began to cheer, and the rivalry became very keen. The ships of the barbarians sailed faster, since their crews had undergone very long training, but those of the Greeks had sufficient lead. The distance was covered very quickly, and when the ships drew near the land, they rushed side by side for the beach, like men in a race. Indeed, since they were within range, the first of the Carthaginian ships were sending missiles at the last of those of Agathocles. Consequently, when they had fought for a short time with bows and slings, and the barbarians had come to close quarters with a few of the Greek ships, Agathocles got the upper hand, since he had his complement of soldiers. At this, the Carthaginians withdrew, and lay offshore a little beyond bowshot. But Agathocles, having disembarked his soldiers at the place called Latomai, and constructed a palisade from sea to sea, pulled his ships ashore.
Alrighty.
Had established his beachhead. To signal his determination, Agathocles then burned his own ships. There was no
Hey, welcome in.
Sparing little time, he now loosed his
We're
men
past
from the countryside,
Hannibal.
ravaging farm and
We've already
fortress
gone through
alike.
his life and when
Just
he's
through the
died.
citizens
We're
of
closer
Carthage
towards the end of the Punic
If the
Wars
Greeks
now.
were here, in Africa, then that must mean that a
Yeah.
disaster of
But
unprecedented
welcome
scale
to the
had befallen
stream.
forces in Sicily. However, such fears subsided when messengers reported that Agathocles had merely run a blockade. Yet even with this assurance, they still had to deal with the enemy, which had managed to
I'm
reach
from
their
the
front quickly.
U.S. That's
Thus, a pair
that's
of
about as
generals,
close as you're going to
Hanno
get
and
as
Bomilcar,
to where
were
I'm
appointed to
from.
lead a new force raised from the citizenry of Carthage itself. Our sources claim it boasted around 40,000 infantry, 1,000 cavalry, and 2,000 chariots. This massive but untested force now set off to crush the 14,000 man army of Agathocles, which had encamped near the recently sacked town of White Tunis.
Nice, Romania.
We are told that the
It
Carthaginians
looks
arranged
nice
themselves as
there. I
follows:
don't know how nice it
Hanno
actually
with the sacred
is,
band
but
on the right,
maybe that's just me
Bomilcar
liking
with
to
a deep
travel.
phalanx on the left,
Or
and the
wanting to
remaining
travel, I
infantry in
should
the
say.
center, with cavalry and chariots arranged in the front. In response, Agathocles took the left wing with his personal guard and 1,000 hoplites. The right was commanded by
Yeah,
his son,
so
with some
is it beautiful
2,500
there?
infantry, while the remaining 9,000 force of mixed infantry took the center. Finally, some 500 archers and slingers were divided between the wings. Diodorus Siculus further enhances this story by claiming that Agathocles had his rowers take up shield covers and sticks to pose as additional infantry, while owls were released among the men to assure them that Athena watched over their ranks. Soon, battle would begin with the
That's
charge
smart,
of the
making them feel
Carthaginian
like they're
chariots.
gods on their
Such a
side.
sight would have surely routed a greener force, but Agathocles' men were well disciplined. Arrow
Okay, yeah,
fire cut down
yeah,
the
that sounds
oncoming ranks,
nice.
while chariot teams were
Beautiful,
allowed to pass through a
natural
gap
stuff
spared
like
by,
that.
or even
I,
turn
I do
back by a
like
stalwart
nature.
line of spears.
My family's got some land
Next
out in
came
the
the
woods.
charge
I
of the
do
cavalry, which met a
occasionally
similar
like
fate
going over
against the
there just to
immovable
chill
phalanx.
there.
But the true test came as the Carthaginian infantry finally advanced in a huge third wave. Diodorus Siculus reports the following, quote, "A gallant battle developed, and Hanno, who had fighting under him the sacred band of selected men, and was intent upon gaining the victory by himself, pressed heavily upon the Greeks, and slew many of them. Even when all kinds of missiles were hurled against him, he would not yield, but pushed on, though suffering many wounds. Yet while Hanno and the Punic elites very nearly achieved a breakthrough, when their general was struck down, this momentum ground to a halt. Agathocles, in turn, struck back, pressing the Carthaginian wing all the harder. Diodorus Siculus claims that upon hearing this news, the general
I'm gonna pause
Bomilcar.
it real quick towards the end of the battle because I'm actually kind of curious. What is your favorite nature site there? Because I'm sure you'll have one. I'm not too sure. Does Romania have mountains? I think it does. I'm not too familiar with geography over there. I know y'all got some pretty places though.
Attempted to withdraw his own forces to more defensible high ground. Supposedly, this was out of a desire to doom the nobility of the sacred band which were his rivals back in Carthage. Whatever the case, this ploy failed spectacularly as the redeployment quickly dissolved into a rout. Agathocles and his men now swept over the battlefield. Without cavalry, their range proved limited, but those who fell into their grasp were slaughtered. All told,
That's
our
fair.
sources claim
After
that just
this,
a
we
few
can
hundred Greeks were killed,
look
and
at
several
that.
thousand Carthaginians were lost.
I've mostly been looking at history,
In
but I
the
don't mind just
aftermath,
looking at like
Agathocles
some
plundered the Punic
general
camp
land
and advanced to
masses,
the very
stuff like
walls
that.
of Carthage. This would be the first time that a Greek army had gazed upon the city in 2 centuries of conflicts between the rivals. Inside, the Carthaginians were in an uproar, believing that the gods had turned against them. To atone for their sins, massive offerings of gold and sacrifice were reportedly carried out.
Nope.
Ships were also sent to Sicily, begging Hamilcar to return. Instead, the general opted to besiege Syracuse while spreading propaganda that Agathocles had been destroyed,
He said
but he
you're
was
on your own
gambling
to
on a
those
baseless.
guys.
This was a
They're
rather prudent
screwed.
move. After all, the Greek siege of Carthage was ultimately symbolic, given their small size. But Agathocles would find other ways to undermine his foes. The invaders now resorted to plundering the countryside. This had the effect of replenishing their supplies. It also convinced several nearby cities to join Agathocles, either out of fear of him or hatred of the Carthaginians. Over the following months, the Greeks slowly but steadily gained control of the regions around Carthage.
Greeks
Neapolis,
taking control
Thapsus,
now.
Hadrumetum were all put to siege. The assault upon Utica was especially brutal. Here, siege engines bearing hanging prisoners were reportedly brought against the wall, and once inside,
That's a
quote,
cool method.
Agathocles filled the city with slaughter. Some he killed in hand-to-hand fighting, those who were captured he hanged, and those who had fled to temples and altars of the gods he cheated of their hopes. All told, some 200 towns and cities were
Yeah, so you didn't want to be
taken.
in that city,
But
is
the
what I'm
invaders
hearing.
could only be so many places at once. The Carthaginians attempted to take advantage of this by striking at vulnerable positions. Yet Diodorus Siculus reports how Agathocles masterfully used rapid movement and trickery to cover his weaknesses. Somehow, against all odds,
Can't
he was not
outspeed
only
them.
surviving, but thriving deep within enemy lines. From here, things only got worse for Carthage. In 309 BC, Hamilcar would be killed in action with his Sicilian army now
There goes their
fractured into
favorite
fragments
general.
outside the walls of Syracuse. Meanwhile, Bomilcar attempted a coup which threw the Punic government into chaos, while Agathocles saw his forces grow in number by murdering the Greek ruler of Cyrenaica and absorbing his army. Carthage finally caught a break when rebellion began to break out in Sicily against the Syracusans. Agathocles decided to return home to restore order, whilst leaving his son, Archagathus, in command of the African campaign.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm back. Someone came in to ask me a question.
Affairs in Sicily
We're all good now to go.
proved incredibly difficult, owing to the treacherous geographic and geopolitical nature of the island. Thus, the tyrant was forced to fight an extended series of grueling campaigns. Meanwhile, his son continued to make progress in Africa by subjugating more towns and striking out into the interior. Yet it seems that Archagathus was stretching himself dangerously thin.
Better slow down there, boy.
Carthage was finally able to settle its internal affairs and prepare for a proper counterattack. Forming 3 separate armies of around 10,000 men each, they now simultaneously
sorry if it's hard to understand me.
The Greeks responded
Yeah, no,
by
I'm
splitting
from
the forces in 3.
I'm from America. I'm just in the South. That might be why.
In the center, his forces were slaughtered in an ambush, while along the coast, his army was drawn into a trap by feigned flight and equally destroyed. Roughly 12,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry were lost.
That's fine.
Disaster.
I'm not no smart person. I ain't using big words, nothing like that.
Now switched sides back to Carthage. Archagathus soon found himself surrounded and desperately called upon his father for aid. Agathocles quickly won a string of victories to settle affairs in Sicily before sailing to rescue his son. The tyrant managed to rejoin the army and cobbled together a force whose core was made up of some 12,000 infantry, 1,500 horsemen, in addition to an unreliable body of 10,000 Libyans. These he now marched against the Carthaginians.
Alright, we got Greeks back on the shore.
Large army. Either side encamped upon nearby hills. Time was on the Punic side, and thus Agathocles was forced to assault their encampment. Details are sparse. We are told that the battle was hard fought, but that the Greeks were driven back with heavy losses. In the night which followed, Diodorus Siculus reports an incredible
Is this where we're going to see him die?
Apparently, the Punic celebrations led to a fire, which quickly spread.
Never mind.
Panic spread when false alarms reported that the Greeks were attacking, which then caused the entire army to flee back to nearby Carthage. At the same
they
time,
really set themselves on fire then ran off.
Caused a similar panic among the Greeks, who were already shaken by their losses. Dawn seems to have cleared up the confusion, but nerves were certainly frayed after such a sleepless night. For Agathocles, the event prompted him to plan a secret escape. When this was discovered, his own army threw him in chains.
Yeah, that's fair.
Was eventually released, but
he tried running from him
to flee for good, abandoning his men and his sons. The remaining Greek forces were now forced to seek pity from the Carthaginians. A deal was struck to negotiate their surrender. However, some chose to resist, in the hopes that Agathocles would return to save them with reinforcements.
They're definitely not coming back.
There would be no salvation this time. Carthage swept down upon them with vengeful fury, crucifying their leaders, which included the sons of Agathocles, and enslaving the rest to serve as laborers to toil in the fields they had destroyed.
Yep.
Upon learning of this, the tyrant flew into a rage. He reportedly lashed out against the families of those whom he blamed for contributing to the Greek defeat in Africa, and soon visited upon the people of Sicily many brutalities. Diodorus Siculus reports that, quote, because of the multitude of those who had been slain besides its waves, the sea, stained with blood over a great expanse, proclaimed afar the unequaled savagery of this outrage. In 306 BC, Syracuse and Carthage would finally come to terms. Both sides had suffered tremendously.
Looks like they're coming to an end finally, at least.
It was finally time for peace, lest they weaken each other to the point that both collapsed from exhaustion. The terms stipulated that Syracuse would maintain control over eastern Sicily, while Carthage retained control of the west. What followed would be a long-awaited period of peace between bitter enemies. Thus, after 2 centuries of fighting...
Okay, we'll stop it there, the video-wise. But yeah, so at least they finally came to an end war-wise. Did not mean to close that for me. Minimize that. Alright, now that we're done with that, though, actually, we will go check out some of that land that you're talking about. Let's check out some Romanian Russians. No, not Romanian. What am I doing? I'm about to type in some lettuce. Romania mountains. Let's check out some of those mountain ranges. Yeah, no clue what that one's about. Let's check out some of these images. Okay, well, already I like how this house is. It's not even the mountain, but I do like how this house is. Oh, yeah, no. This is actually some really pretty, mountain ranges. God, yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, these are actually really beautiful. Person. We don't want people. We just want the cool-looking mountains. Alright. I know they aren't the same, but this kind of reminds me of Colorado's mountains. I been there a couple times in Estes Park. If y'all ever get the chance, go to Estes Park. It is beautiful there. That's a cool looking mountainside. Let's exit out and scroll. Ooh. That's really pretty. Yeah. Thanks for telling me about those, that you'll have some really cool looking mountains. I'm really glad I actually came look now. I just love mountain scenes with like lakes and stuff in it. You know what? New thing. We're just looking up mountains now. We're going to look up some Colorado mountains. Rot. I put actually. I don't know why I've always spelt it as rot. But yeah, no. I'm trying to see if I can't find any of like around Estes Park. Estes Park, yeah. So this is where I've been before. Yeah. It wasn't during winter time, but oh yeah, this. I actually remember driving past this like little area. So what this is they have some towards the outskirts of Estes Park. They have some old ranch farms, and you can see stuff like this out there. You can get a nice view of like some of the properties and stuff they have, and then those nice mountains in the back. Let me see if I can't find a better image because they have some like really old ranches out there that you can see in their mountain ranges. I'm trying to see if I can't find any. You know the worst part is I know exactly where this picture's taken at Estes Park. So basically there's actually a car ride you can use to go up the mountains, and there's always a group of elks. Like every time we went, you could see this group of elks that would chill on these hillsides, not far from the road, and there'd always be people taking pictures of them there. This, I think I know where this lake is. I don't know how you actually get to it, though. I know there is a lake up there, though. Lucky cuz or elks. Oh, y'all got bears. Yeah, actually, when we did go there, we actually, we forgot to lock the lid of our, trash can one time. And we actually woke up to, we couldn't see, we didn't know what type of bear it was. It was probably a black bear. But, it actually got into our trash can and threw our, trash all across the, yard at where we were staying because it's all not salt, but it smelled some chicken we had in there, and since we didn't lock it, it knocked it over and tore it open. But yeah, no, they got bears there as well. It's just not as common to see. I'll put it like that. It's not as common to see out there, at least if you stay on the trails, stuff like that. Another one, actually, I'm gonna go back to the sandwich real quick. I actually came face to face with one of these guys. Another time we went there because we've gone there 3 times because my family just loves the mountains. My dad had ended up calling me outside. Didn't tell me why. I walked outside and basically it was taller than me, but right in front of me stood one of these big guys. Just he was just chilling there in our front patio, and since it was somewhat dark outside and I was tired, I had no clue it was there. Didn't even see it till I basically almost bumped into it. Really want to go during the winter time at some point though, because God, I want to see stuff like this, and you can only see that during the winter. Well, not that during the winter. That's just their permafrost, and they got these cool little flowers that are always up there in the permafrost. Actually, a cool thing about that at least I personally found cool about Estes Park is way up on their permafrost. There's always that cliff that I was talking about that you have to go up via car where those elks like to chill. A part of the permafrost is actually stained a brownish red. And I just find that cool because it's just all snow white, and then there's just this one line going down that's this brownish red. Here's another one of those lakes I was talking about that I don't know how to get to. I know you can go to them. I think you have to go like hiking though somewhere. And my grandparents came with us and they were too old to do stuff like that, and it would take days, so we never got to do that. Maybe sometime though. And here's is that Main Street? Yeah, that's Main Street. Actually, this little white building I'm pointing at right now is actually a taffy shop. Saltwater taffy shop. I think there was another one like right here. I think this one was a candy shop as well. And if I remember correct, that was a bookstore. If I'm thinking of it, but this does look like Main Street. Yeah, Main Street, beautiful, beautiful place. Let's see if we can't get a overview of the entire thing. Yeah. Oh wait, here it is. Yeah, you see that tall building right there? That is an old theater. We actually went in there. From what I remember correct, it is one of the, I don't know if it's state or in the U.S., but point being, it's one of the oldest standing cinema buildings there. And like when you're walking, you can see it. It's all wood, and the parts like to change like the filter stuff like that. You basically have to go up these old wooden ladders and beams. There's nowhere to walk like in newer ones where it's just steps. No, you have to for like stuff like that to change that at the top. There's no stairs going up there. You have to climb up support beams basically. Yeah, it's really beautiful, man. I know you're far away, but if you ever get the chance to go to the US and see something pretty and some actually really old stuff, you should definitely try Estes Park. I have not been out of the US. No, I want to. I really do want to. I had the chance in high school, but you have to pay a. It was like a down payment of like 5,000 or 3,000, I think, to go per person, and it was in Spain. I barely passed Spanish, and for the amount of money, as much as I wanted to go, I opted not to. A, because that's a lot of money, and B, I don't speak Spanish, so even though we'd be in the group together, stuff like that, I really didn't want to take that chance of being that one person that got split off by myself. It was also during the time that COVID came around. COVID was still going on when the trip was planned, so unfortunately, that also got in the way. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, they went to the. I was still there. It was my junior year that they would have gone. So my senior year, yeah, because it was during the summer of my junior year going into senior year that they when I came back. I wasn't like buddies with one of the teachers, but I knew one of the teachers that went. You know, we were kind of friendly with each other. I hang out in their class senior year when I didn't have a class. They showed me some pictures and stuff. It definitely was beautiful. Kind of wish I did go. But yeah, is there any? I'm trying to think. What are some other good mountain ranges we can check out? We could just check out the Rocky Mountains overall. That got me talking about mountains, my man. uh, I don't remember the school program. Um, it wasn't. Yeah, no, I really don't remember the program. I think I think it was more or less by the school itself. I think that's why it was so expensive. Because the school said they would fund a little bit of it, but that's why you needed so much money to go. Is because they planned this out like a year and a half ahead. But basically, they got into contact with some people there. I think it was through the Spanish teacher and some of the other teachers, like the history teacher and English teacher. I managed to get into contact with some people over there, and since he spoke Spanish, he did most of the translating to actually get it set up for the classes to go. So that was cool. But yeah, no, it was a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's some great places. National parks and you know what? Let's look at some Colorado national parks. Oh, what is this? I know TripAdvisor. I don't want to go to you. Yellowstone National Park. Yeah, as beautiful as that water looks, something tells me that's actually very, very hot. This is another place I'd like to go in Colorado, is I want to go into the actual God, my Grand Canyon, yeah, Grand Canyon area, stuff like that, and look at all these buildings that were carved into the side of the mountain. For not mountain, I mean valleys, stuff like that, ravine, because a lot of people lived in the canyons, like Native Americans. I forget which tribe it was. Yeah, I forgot which tribe it is. Might check it out later. But point being, I find that so cool that they have these entire like towns and stuff just carved out of the side of these mountains. Um, I'm just going to call it Case. Case, is there anything else that you might think of that we should look up? I'm trying to think because, like I said, I don't know a lot of EU places. Is there any place you know of that I should probably look up that might be pretty or something like that? Because, like I said, I'm probably not going to be going for a while, but I definitely do want to visit places. So if you know any like cool places, pop it in chat so I can type it in. We can go check them out. Till then, I'm gonna chill looking at some mountains real fast because this is what I like to do when I'm not on stream. I'm either playing a game or already watching something history related. Where's this at? Let's actually check out some. It says it has some facts. I'm not too interested in that place. Uh, but yeah, if you can think of something, I might actually let's see. Okay, this is just more about the Punic Wars. I don't know, brother. Whole Spain, Greece, Italy, Turkey, or I don't know what that is. I do not know it. Let's actually check it out. Oh, wrong letter. Urge familiar. Let's check it out. Oh, Oh yeah, isn't that big church? Are they? Aren't they? Isn't it known as the church that they're still working on? Yeah, it is. Okay, now I know what it is. Yeah, this it's a beautiful architect thing. I forget. Did they ever finish it? Or are they still working on it? Yeah, I know. It's it's okay. So it is still not finished. Yeah, no. It's just wild to me that it's so old. Oh wait, no. That actually reminds me. There's an Estes Park Church in Colo because they. I'm trying to think of what it's called. They have like this church that's on the side of a mountain actually. Oh, yeah, church. Yeah, no, because they have like this. Where is it? Okay, yeah. So I've been in this one. I've been in this old church, but the one that I'm trying to find, it's another one. It's like on a cliff. You can barely see it anymore because no one goes out there really. So it's mostly been covered up, but it's a beautiful old stone church. Where is it? I can't find. I guess they must not have it. It may not have been a church. I forget what it is. I know I misspelled building, but it knows what I'm talking about. I generally can't find it. I really wish I could have showed you that. Because, yeah, I don't know how many churches we have in the US. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Yeah, no. I can't find the one I wanted to show y'all. I guess they just don't have pictures of it. But this is that church on that hillside. Is this the one? This is the one. Here it is. Yeah. So you can't see it in this picture, but back here there's a parking lot. You go up some old stone steps and you walk in here. It's pretty empty, really. There's a little pond in the back over here that you can't see. There's a better image of it, yeah. But yeah, no, that is actually. How big is Romania? Don't think it's too big. So yeah, 30,000 yeah, 30,000 churches is kind of wild. I will not lie. Only 20 million people with 30,000 churches? Good God, that's a lot. Yeah, all right. We'll check out those castles real quick. Rank images. Let's check it out. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Ooh. I love night pictures where stuff's like lit up. This is God. This is some old architect that's really beautiful. Oh, didn't mean to click again. Let's go back. It's all really cool though. I like how it has this stone cliff on the side. This is a cool castle. Let's check out the other one now real fast. Dracula Castle. Oh yeah. 1,000-year-old castle. That's it. They're pretty cool. Sure, yeah, I can check out castles. Yeah, if you want to see like a certain castle or something, or you know of any cool ones, just pop it in chat. I'll check them out one at a time. I do not know a lot of castles though, so keep that in mind. You can send those to me, and I'll gladly look at them. Is this a drawing or a picture? I generally cannot tell if that's a drawing or a picture. I have no clue what you just sent me in chat. It's a picture. Either way, I can't really look at it through stream on this because I actually have my chat on my phone off to the side. That's how I'm reading chat without having to look all the way around, stuff like that. Is I have it on my phone to the side. Interior, let's check out the interior actually. What's that? Is that oh shit. View, no, do not flag. View, I'm trying to see if that's a suit of armor. Okay, so is that a statue or a suit of armor? I can't tell. I think it might be statues. Either way, those are some very nice. Oh hey, we got homie chilling in the back. So that's where that painting's at. I've seen that painting a couple times. Okay, oh, so it is armor. Okay, so it's not statues. It's just straight up armor. That's cool. These castles are huge. Yeah. Case, because I did say that's what I was going to tell you. Case, have you actually seen the Stanley interior Stanley Hotel, stuff like that before? I don't have pictures on my computer. Oh, excuse me. But I've been inside. They have some cool stuff in there, my man. Uh, Also, the whole ghost thing, stuff like that. I've been there. They do kind of change it around, I'll be honest, because especially at the end of the tour, they change it every year because I've gone there twice. And each year it's been a different thing. But what's cool about it is you can actually get pictures of like shadow stuff that doesn't make sense, things like that. So I don't know if I'd call it a ghost, but there's definitely something cool that messes with the cameras there. I might not show it this stream, but next stream I'll probably either do some D&D horror stories, or I might actually go over like ghost stuff, and I'll pull those up from my phone onto my laptop to show you. Because I have technically three photos that show some cool stuff. One of which my mother took when we went that she sent me. You can see a shadow figure with the rest of us walking. What's cool about it is, it's not someone's shadow because you can actually see it casting its own shadow. And the second one is I had a photo come out pitch black and take another one right after that was perfectly fine. What's weird about it though is I had my flash on. Yeah, from Stanley Hotel, and my the lady next to me also took a picture with her flash on, so we had two flashes. Her picture came out fine. Mine didn't come out okay. I took it again without my flash. I think it was with my flash. It came out fine. But what's weird, it wasn't me covering my finger, because in the actual picture, you can see one of the windows still lit up. And you can turn up the brightness and saturation on the photo enough to see that there's nothing there. You can even see the outline of where my flash is. So for some reason, that photo just turned out completely black almost. So yeah, that's just some cool stuff that I got there, and that's why I love going there if I ever get to go again. Is because even if I don't believe like there's story behind it, you can still get some really cool photos if you're lucky. But just in case you didn't hear me in that rant, yeah, I was talking about the Stanley Hotel. Yeah, here it is. Oh, and what's cool about it is I got to see this. Um, this was my technical third time going. Is we went there because this was our third and final time. I forget. Yeah, it was only 3 or 4 times we went, but point being, we actually they have an underground music, not music, playroom, like for plays stuff like that, and they do movies and stuff there. And I actually got to go into one and do it, like watch some magicians, stuff like that. And they and it's good because they fit the vibe. They do like a ghost and horror story stuff, but with magic. And what's cool about it is it's behind a bookcase. So after you pay, you just sit in this book room for a bit. And then when the play's actually ready to start, they'll actually open the thing so you can go in. I did not know that actually. I did not know that y'all had the second biggest building besides our Pentagon. Also want to show you their I think it's called their playroom. Is that what it's called? No, it's not their playroom. What is it called? Oh yeah, by the way, this is actually because this is actually somewhat important. This is actually where you go to start your tour. Right where you see that red line is, there's a room on this side? Or it might be here. I kind of see the room here. But long story short, you go into that room here, and that's where your tour actually starts. And eventually you even go into the basement. Let's actually check that up real quick. I want to see what that looks like. Come on, load. Ooh, that's actually a pretty cool looking building. I will give y'all that. That is a cool looking building. Let's get a closer look real fast. Oh, wait, and I just realized I've been covering them with my avatar. Let me move to this side real fast. Ah, shit. I still have all the things on the side up. Give me 1 second. There we go. Now I can move without covering it. I just realized I've been showing y'all new pictures and stuff, and my avatar's been covering it this entire time. Yeah, it looks a bit small, but I know how big these flagpoles actually are, uh, IRL, so I really do know how big this building is next to this stuff. Oh, you can drive underground here? That's actually wild. I want to check this out real fast. It's got a bunch of watermarks. Does this one have... Yeah. Let's see if I can't find one that's not covered with watermarks, like here. It's kind of small. Let's just view image. Yeah, dictators tend to have a lot of escape routes. Yeah, no, this place is... I really love this. Like, the open, like... I know they have lights and stuff to still light it, but that's really cool looking. To have the sun coming in from there. Also going to close out the Punic War tab, this tab, this tab. Yeah, no, that's actually really cool, man. Go back to images. Check this out. That's a lot of rooms. That is, in fact, a lot of rooms. I actually want to show you something. Oldest movie theater in the USA. Because I believe that's the one in Colorado. It's one of the oldest. No, so it's not in because I really do want to actually show you that movie theater I was talking about. Where is it? Is it the oldest movie theater in Colorado? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, this is the one I went in. Yeah, all this is empty, and the only way you could change that is literally going up like these little support beams. You can't see them through here, but there's support beams in there that you have to go up. Yeah, Estes Park view. Oh, nope, you need tickets. Nope, nope, nope. Not what I want. Trying to get some good. They don't have a lot of pictures of it, but yeah, it was like one of the oldest ones in Colorado. They have a lot of old ones. Here's another picture of it. Old picture of it. But yeah, no, that movie theater's still up and running. You can still go in there and watch movies in old chairs. They've of course changed it a little bit to make the cushions sittable and not unbearable to sit there for a couple hours watching a movie. But yeah, with that, I had fun looking at some old buildings and stuff with you. Please consider following me and tune back in sometime so we can do this again. But unfortunately, I do have to go somewhere, so this will be coming up to the end of stream. Besides